The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. It's Friday. Can you feel it? I can feel it. We're going to be with you for the next 3 hours live, talking about topics having to do with autism and how we can be more effective, more efficient working with our kids who are on the autism spectrum. Whether you're a parent, a teacher, a practitioner, I know that it's really important to you to be a really effective member of that team. And we want to give you the tool belt so that and give you ideas of ways in which you can apply that tool belt and the individual tools, obviously, because none of our kids are the same, right? There is no cookie cutter that is going to be able to pump out something that can help all of our kids. But what we do know and what science has shown is that if we take the tools of ABA, that we can apply these creatively to any of our children and see progress. And a lot of times, tremendous progress. So we're here to tell you about how to apply those tools, how to really use them, the nuts and bolts of how you can do this in your real life, in your real world. We have experts from time to time. That's certainly going to be the case today, who come in and talk to us. And we give you the opportunity to interact with us, tell us what you need, what you'd like to hear stories about, and to ask experts the questions that you want answered. We mentioned at the top of the show in our little disclaimer that none of what we say is meant to be child specific. When you call in with a question or you write in with a question, we don't know your child. The experts that I have here on the show don't know your individual child, and no one would want to be in a position of that much disrespect to assume that based on two things that you tell us that anybody could know your child, right? I think that's a common sense thing that as parents and as teachers we all get, but I gotta say it anyway. But there are so many things I think that we can talk about that are useful and helpful to make us better teachers, make us better members of the team. So we talk about those things. And I hope you will participate in the conversation and let us know what kinds of things you want to know about, what will help you in your effort, in your journey through autism. So don't make us guess. We're too tired, we're too busy, we're too overwhelmed on our own. I certainly am to guess. I always say I gave up mind reading to be an autism mom. I am an autism mom. My son was diagnosed when he was 2.5. He's 9 and he is just spectacular. He is the light of my life, and I just adore the ground that he walks on, and he's also doing really well. He just finished 3rd grade, completely included, has been since kindergarten, and when I tell you that we went to our first IEP when he was 3, and I was told to let go of that. That he was going to do just fine in school, in the special day class, and that there was no expectation that he was ever going to get caught up. That was what I heard at my first IEP meeting. Fortunately, I didn't listen to that. And fortunately, I had access to other people who told me quite the contrary and said, we're going to get your child caught up. And those were people at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. It's why I'm a huge fan of theirs. I make no bones about that and absolutely no apologies whatsoever. They gave me back my child using the principles of ABA. Now, unfortunately, all of you do not have access to CARD in your home yet, although they are constantly expanding. They are in more locations than any other ABA provider in the world, servicing more clients with autism than any other provider. and they're working on getting in more locations. If you want to have CARD in your location, you can get a group of families together and let CARD know. You can go to their website, and we'll talk more about that later on today. But that's where my son got his ABA therapy, and that's how I always refer to it as the autism miracle in my living room, because that's really what it was. We talk about some of the things that happened in our living room and some of the things that could be happening in your living room. So join in the conversation. There's lots of ways to participate. If you're watching us on autism-live.com, and across the top of your screen, it either says live or rebroadcast. If it says live, then your question box is active. You can type in there, hit enter, and it shows up magically right here on my screen. I'm going to have lots of experts, well, lots, in today and lots more in the coming days. So you have the opportunity to interact with them in that way, too, that you can post a question. I kind of blew it the other day because I got so involved in what the expert was saying. I didn't look down, and right as she was leaving, somebody left a question. But we did get an answer to that, although I'm going to continue to ask people the answer to that question. But I will try to be better today and make sure that I'm keeping tabs on the questions. If you are watching and it says rebroadcast, or you're watching us on any one of the other ways that you can watch us, I want to let you know that there's lots of other ways to participate besides the question box. You can email us. We've got the address right there on your screen. Feel free to email us no matter what time of day or night it is where you are. We will get that email the next time that we're here doing a show. We'll cover it on the live show, but we'll also send you a typewritten response. Sometimes that takes a couple of days. I want you to be patient, but remember, it's free. So sometimes that allows for some patience. So you can email us, tell us what your thoughts are, your concerns, your questions, what you'd like to see more segments about, what topics you want covered, that kind of thing. We really appreciate it. I also like to know, I know you're busy, but if you have a second to say, hey, this helped, that helps me. So a really great thing. Or saying the quite opposite, this was not helpful, this was not useful, also good, right? There are other ways of getting in touch with us too. You can phone into the show if you want to. We'll patch you into the live show, or you can leave a message if we're not here, or you can talk to somebody outside the studio. I know sometimes you just don't want to talk about it live on the air, right? Or you're shy or whatever, that's okay. But if you need the help, know that you can get it. Use the phone, pick up the phone, call, we'll get you connected with somebody. You can also Skype in. We love to have you Skype in, picture or not, audio only if that's what you need to do if you're having a bad hair day, but we love to have you Skype in on the show. And you can Facebook with us, and you can tweet with us. All of those ways are really great ways to interact with us. On Facebook, we like to give you the question of the day. Actually, we do that on Twitter as well. So interact, I dare you to. It's actually quite fun, and we learn a lot from you. Hopefully you're learning something here, but if you can add to what other people are hearing, I think that's a really beneficial thing. And if you need somebody to help pick you up off the floor, sometimes it helps to give that shout out on Facebook, and people will give you the support you need. It's a wonderful thing. Also want to mention that if you're watching us, you could be watching us, as I said, on autism-live.com, or you could be watching us on Blip TV. This is a great way to pause, rewind, search a topic. You can also be watching us on our very own YouTube channel, where you can see all of the clips. Again, you can search topics, you can pause, you can come back to it. You guys asked for the ability to pause and come back, and I really appreciated knowing that, because as a mom, I know, especially when you're in the thick of things with therapy and you got stuff going on, you got a therapist at the door, you got to leave and go to OT. You can't always just plop in front of the computer and watch for 3 hours, and we wanted it to be as conducive as possible for you guys to be able to participate and watch and get information, right? So again, all these ways are free. Also on iTunes, you can download us. We're a free download on iTunes. The audio only version, I laugh because I've been promising it to you. It is coming. I promise you, it is coming. And you can also watch us on Ustream. So lots of ways to be checking us out, lots of ways to interact. I hope that you will, because one of the things we're going to talk about today, if we get the time, is that when you're in this, you feel alone. You just do. And I certainly did. And I remember thinking, I don't know who to go to. I don't know where to go. I don't know who to ask, and feeling a little at sea. And if I can save you feeling that for 5 minutes, then my work is done for the day, right? Because I also want to save you time too. We lost time while we were figuring out what to do, whether it was figuring out that ABA was going to be something that was effective, or figuring it out how we were going to get that funded, or figuring it out how our lives were going to work while we were going through ABA. We lost time because there were different times when we thought, oh, we got to invent this wheel. And what always worked is when I talked to another parent and said, how did you do this? How did you get through this? How did you manage this? And they were like, oh, I did X, Y, and Z. Now, sometimes, X didn't work, or Y didn't work, or Z didn't work, but there was some element that I could take from it, even if it was just the hope that they figured it out. And that if they figured it out, then by golly, I was going to get it figured out too, and sometimes that's all you need to know, is that you're not the only one, not the only one going through it, not the only one that had to figure it out, not the only one who found it hard. Whew. Let's take 7 hours to talk about how hard it is, right? It's hard. And there were days when, you guys, it brought me to my knees and I went, what am I missing here? Why does this have to be so hard? Well, you know what? It is hard, but it doesn't have to be any harder than it has to be, if that makes sense to you. We can help you to figure out the parts of it that are just plug in, and then you can figure out the parts that are individual to you. Okay, so that's what we're here for. We'll hold your hand through this, because you can do this. Man, if I could do this, I was as unprepared to do this as possible. And if I could do this, then I know for sure that you can do this. Si se puede, right? Okay, so we like to start every morning with something that we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is the time of day where we take one word, one phrase, one anagram, and we demystify it. We give you an actual definition, which a lot of times we like to make fun of. I like to make fun of them because they're filled with more jargon. When you say this, don't you love that when you go into the store and you say to someone something and they answer you a question? This happened to me in a Target store a couple of months ago. I said, do you have this product? Oh, we had it, but it was in and I don't even know what the phrase was that she said. It was in a something something sale. And I said, oh, I'm not familiar with that term. What does that mean? Clearly jargon that they use at their store. And she goes, oh, well, it's a something something sale. And I said, all right, well, I don't know what the something something means. What does that mean? And she goes, oh, it means something something. The exact same words. I said, I am no closer to understanding. Could you help me use some other word in the sentence? And instead, she said, oh, well, it's when the something does the something. Again, I can't remember what the words were, but she just kept using the same terms. And I said, I'm, thank you for giving me context, but I'm still not getting it, right? And a lot of times when you ask someone what something means, they will tell you the same word or give you more jargon terms. And you go, really? Not helpful, not helpful. So I like to make fun of that. We're going to watch the A Word later on, and I love the episode of the A Word when the therapist is talking to the dad, and she says, right now we're working on manding, as if manding is a word that everyone uses every day. It's just, you acquire this word in second grade and you go through your life and you're using the word manding. No. And the dad says, I'm sorry, what did you say? And she says, manding. We're teaching him manding and we're rewarding manding and we're tracking manding. And he says, I'm sorry, I'm still not hearing the word. Are you saying, what is the word? And he actually has her spell it because he has it's an odd word, manding. And then he says, I don't know what that means. And she said, oh, it's when you mand. And he's saying, yeah, don't get it. And then finally she breaks it down for him and says, I'm sorry. And then she explains to him what manding is. And by the way, it's when we request, we're trying to get our children to the point where they request something. So manding is when they request something. So when a child says cookie because they want a cookie, that's manding. And we want to see lots of that, right? So a very important term that as a parent or as a teacher we want to know, but it's hilarious when you ask somebody what it means. Well, it means manding. No, that's not helpful. I love to make fun of that. Okay, so anyway, our phrase for today, we've been talking a lot about prompting this week. And so our phrase for today is prompt fading. Now, we've talked about this a little bit already this week, but let's take a look at what our actual definition for prompt fading is. Gradually reducing the level of prompting provided across learning trials until a prompt is no longer given. Well, that's great if you already know what a prompt is. But if you don't know what a prompt is, that makes it really difficult, right? Okay, let's look at our working definition, providing less and less of a prompt until the child can do the skill independently. Well, really no better because we still have the word prompt in there. But we have said all week long that a prompt is something that you do that helps the child to get the right answer. So when we're fading the prompt, we're going to do it less and less until they don't need it anymore. Imagine, it's pool season for a lot of us. You're in the swimming pool and you're trying to get the child to float on their back, right? What's something that you do? You put up your hands to help them, right? But over time, you gradually move your hands further and further away so that they're floating by themselves. Same kind of thing with a prompt, right? We talked earlier about this week about a model prompt when we actually do the behavior ourselves. So if I'm trying to get the child to touch their nose and I say, touch your nose, that's a model prompt, right? So the first time I'm going to full on do it. I'm going to say, touch your nose, and I'm doing it, and I want them to mimic me. But the second time that I say, touch your nose, I might go and go up towards my nose, but I'm not touching it. I'm starting to fade it. Then the third time I say, touch your nose, and I'm just making the gesture up towards my nose, or I might even just point at my nose, right? So I'm fading it to the point where I say to the child, touch your nose, and I don't do anything with my hands, and the child touches their nose. Woohoo, right? I'm reinforcing every time they do it, but when they do it without a prompt, I'm really pulling out the stops and reinforcing like no tomorrow. We also talked about a textural prompt, right? That we can hold up a little card or something that has text on it that reminds the child what to do. So if I'm doing touch your nose, and I might have a card that says touch nose, right? How do you fade textural prompts? Well, you take words out. So I say touch nose, and I might hold up a card eventually that says nose, right? So I'm assuming that they are hearing receptively touch and that they're going ahead and touching their nose. And then I might make the card smaller or the print smaller. And I might eventually just tap the card that's on the desk and then make the card go away. We also talked about a physical prompt, right? The difference between a model prompt and a physical prompt. When I'm modeling it, I'm doing it to myself. When I'm doing a physical prompt, I am motoring them through it for themselves. So if I say touch your nose and I'm doing a physical prompt, a full physical prompt, I'm going to take their hand and lead it very gently. I'm not manhandling. Touch the nose. Yay! Good job, right? Then the next time I might just very loosely, I'm not really holding, but I'm kind of there to direct. Then I might just use a finger, and then I might just point, right? So I'm fading out the prompt to the point where they can do it themselves. We see this a lot with a verbal prompt that we fade, right? We do this all the time in real life, that we say to a child, a prompt, something happens, and we say to the child, what do you say? Or we say thank you, right? And then sometimes we just say the first sound. So I might look at the child and go, and then they go, oh, thank you, right? So I'm fading my prompt to get to the point where the child literally will do it on their own. So we always are fading prompts. Now here's the trick with prompt fading. Sometimes we go too quickly, right? Happens. It's not the end of the world. But let's imagine that I'm saying to the child, touch your nose, and I'm using a physical prompt because this child learns in that way. Different children, different things that are going to help them because the prompt really is there to help them get it done, not to tick them off, right? So some children don't like to be touched. If I've got a child that I'm saying, touch your nose, and they don't like to be touched, I'm going to use the model prompt instead of the physical prompt. But let's imagine that for this child, physical prompt works. So I'm physically prompting them through it, right? And then I start fading my prompt, and I'm being successful. The child is still getting it right, even as I'm fading the prompts. And I get to the point where I'm just touching my finger to them, and they still do it, right? And now I say, I go, okay, well, I've faded. So now the next part of the fading is me doing nothing, and I say touch your nose, but I'm not doing anything, and the child doesn't do it. I wait 3 seconds, the child still doesn't do it. Now I want to go backwards When I get a wrong answer, I want to go backwards to the last successful prompt. I'm not going to dial all the way back to the beginning and say touch your nose and do the full physical prompt again. I'm going to go back to the last successful prompt. So the last success, and I've got it on a sheet. I'm taking data. Right? The last successful prompt was that I just touched with my finger, so I go back to that and see if I get the right response. If I don't, I go back to the next most successful prompt, right? Then where I might be, gently leading, right? Until the child is doing it again. That's how I want to fade my prompts in, but I'm still getting the right answer. Now notice that I don't, sit there and say to the child, why aren't you doing it now? You were doing it a second ago. There's no discussion about it. We just go back to the last successful prompt and see if we can get them to do it again. And if we can't, we go back to the one before that until we can get them to engage in the behavior again, because it's all about getting them to get it right. Why? Because when they get it right, we get to give them reinforcement. And that's what we always want to be finding as quickly as possible, the next possible moment that we can reinforce them. And that has to come quickly, right? And that's why when we work with our children, we're going to give them opportunity, and keep reinforcing, right? And then give them a break. That's really reinforcing. Always want to get to the reinforcement as quick as possible. Because that's what gets the behavior done and maintains it. Principle number one with ABA, in order for any behavior to be maintained, it has to be reinforcing. By the way, that's not just true for our kids with autism, although it is true for our kids with autism. It's also true for our children who don't have autism. It is true for our husbands. It is true for our mother-in-laws. It is true for us. It is true for our children's teachers. It is, by the way, true for our politicians. It is true for everyone. In order for any behavior to be maintained, it has to be reinforcing. So we prompt to get them to the moment when we can reinforce them, and then we fade it out so that they're doing it all on their own. Okay, very exciting when we can prompt and get the skill done. All right, we always have a question of the day for you. Our question of the day is meant to get you thinking and participating. We've been talking a lot about summer and how do we handle this break, because a lot of us have less services during the summer. For the rest of the population, it's like, woohoo, it's summer, it's free time. And a lot of times for those of us with kids on the spectrum, we go, oh, woohoo, it's summer. I'm basically in a whole lot of trouble because I got a whole lot less support, right? But we deal in realities and try to figure out what are we going to do about it. So how do you plan to keep your child progressing over the summer? We've talked this week about a lot of different ways that you might, although there's no way we could cover everything, right? So I want to know from you guys, how do you plan to keep your child progressing over the summer? I've been talking about the fact that although I'm just piecemealing it at the moment, that I have an idea of what we're doing and we've started doing some of it, but we're kind of slowly ramping up to it. I think that's probably the wisest choice, although in the back of my head I'm like, we gotta get busy. But we have specific rules that we have that there can be no video game playing until noon. My son is 9 and his whole entire world is about video games. Now, there's pluses to that, right? Because I happen to know that that's really reinforcing to him, which means that that's the paycheck. So we have stuff we have to get done in the morning so that the paycheck can come in the afternoon. I still have to meter it, but here's the thing. It's harder in the morning to get everybody moving. I'm here a lot of the times during the morning, although I am going to take some time off this summer. But so he's with Dad and, it's summer. It's a slower pace. So there are things set up. We got the typing program. We did not get the one that Mom thought would be the best one. We got the SpongeBob one. I'm having a little battle in my head because I'm waiting to see how effective SpongeBob is going to be. But the truth of the matter is that my child finds it really reinforcing. I do not find it as reinforcing. So I might have to actually go buy a second program. I really wanted it to be a thing where we tracked and kept track of mom, dad, and my son to see, who's doing the best. Because we're competitive. This is a way that we get things done in our house, is by competition. Because I'm competitive, my son's competitive, my husband is competitive, although not as much. He sits back and says, "Man, you guys are competitive." But so we're going to work on typing this summer. We're going to work on writing and writing skills, things like punctuation and capitalization and those kinds of things. We're also taking on the states and the capitals because we didn't get that done any other summer, so that's something that we're taking on. And we're also working on some math skills because my son is ahead in math and we want to keep him ahead. He is working on fractions and decimal points this summer. It's crazy. He's about to bypass me in terms of what he can do because he's into algebra now, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be tragic because he's going to come home with the homework and I'm going to go, I have no idea. It's going to be scary. But we're setting up time in the morning, especially when he's not in the different camps that he's going to do those kinds of things. But there are no video games available until noon, and things have to be accomplished. Some household chores, some school chores before he can have that in the afternoon. We have some educational things planned, some museum trips planned, things like that, and a lot of play dates. My son needs a lot of social interaction this summer. I will tell you, that's the hardest thing for me to get that stuff scheduled, because it involves other people. It's hard. But I said yesterday, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So we're in the planning stage of our summer. But I want to know from you guys. And by the way, we also are using the skills program. We're working on those social language things in the skills program very heavily, and some EF stuff, executive function stuff in there. And we are gonna get the riding the bike with no training wheels out of the park, where it's the goal for the summer. It's gonna happen. But I want to know for you guys, what is your plan? All right, we also always have a topic of the day. Our topic this entire week has been maintaining progress, and more than that, not just maintaining the progress over the summer, but growing it. We can do that, but we need to be mindful of it. We need to have a plan. You need to have some support, but it's so super important. I remember years ago attending some kind of a training. I don't even remember what it was for, but they were talking about the typical trajectory of people that, they make progress in their lives, and then they get to a point, and that some people plateau and some people let things go. And that the difference between wildly successful people are people that they make their progress, and if they can plateau and not drop anything, then when it's time for them to make progress again, that they pick up where they left off and they go that much higher. That the person, and they had this all on a graph, I don't know what research went with it, but it made a certain amount of sense to me that if you make a certain amount of progress and then you let it go, then you have to start back from someplace further. It takes you longer to get where you got to go. Well, we know that's true for kids over the summer, whether they're completely typically developing or have an autism spectrum diagnosis, that if we let go of progress, we got to battle back, right? It's not impossible, but why? Why make it harder when our kids are already behind? Let's maintain progress, and if possible, let's gain. So that's what we've been talking about all week long. Today, some of the things that we're going to talk about, we've got an academic tip for you coming up. And then during the 10 o'clock hour, I know it's not even Wednesday, but we've asked Evelyn Gould to come back in today because we had a question the other day, and it's a big enough topic that I think it warrants having Evelyn come back in, from somebody who wrote in and said that, they're struggling with their child, and that mom is really frustrated and getting to the point where sometimes she's so frustrated that she's yelling. And we can all imagine how that could happen, right? This is not shocking to us, but it's not the most productive thing. And a really wonderful dad was saying, what can I do? Because what's happening is that, the best thing in the moment is when mom is getting to that point that she's saying, I need you to step in. But the dad is saying that long term, it means that the relationship between the mom and the child is degrading. so that they're going to get to the point where the child is not listening to mom. And what can we do to prevent that from happening? And I think it's a pretty universal question, because at some point, I'm going to guess that most of us that are lucky enough to have two people parenting a child on the spectrum, you're not going to be on the same page, right? All the time. And at some point, somebody's going to be right here with the frustration, right? And how we tag team in effectively, and how we help when one member is down or going down. It's a reality. I certainly have been there on both sides of it, times when I just was, at the point where I didn't know what else was going to happen. I just keep making this motion because it's like right here and you can feel it. And saying to my husband, you got to help me, because I'm bailing as fast as I can, but this ship is sinking. And there have been times when the shoe has been on the other foot, when I've seen my husband and seen, he's right there. What can I do to help him? So I talked about this a little bit yesterday and gave my perspective as a parent, somebody who's not an expert, but as a parent having been through it. But Evelyn's going to come in at 10 o'clock and talk to us about, from the professional standpoint, the kinds of things that we can be looking at, because a lot of times it's stuff that I wouldn't have thought of, right? And then at 11 o'clock, it's time for, because Friday, we always end on a high note, Dr. Jonathan Tarbox is going to come in and talk with us about research. Got some really fascinating things to talk with him about, but you guys are a part of the conversation too. So if there's something that you want to ask Evelyn about when one partner is right there, right? Or if you want to ask Dr. Jonathan Tarbox about research, then you can. You just have to type in or email or phone or Skype, whatever flips your switch. So we're going to take a break. When we come back, it's time for our academic tip of the week. Stick with us. Well, today we're going to be talking about how to teach children to recognize other people's emotions. Why is that important to teach kids with autism spectrum disorders?
Children with autism have difficulty recognizing other people's emotions, and we as people generally do things or don't do things based on how other people react. And so it's really important to teach our children how to recognize the emotions of others so that they know how to behave or not behave. And so it's really important too that they start to pick up on how other people feel, because it will determine should they continue acting a certain way around children in a play group, or should they do things to make their parents happy or other family members happy. So it's very important that they become aware and recognize what different emotions look like.
So how do we go about teaching it?
So basically, we generally start with trying to recognize other people's emotions by doing it through a photograph or in a book or through pictures, because that's something that's a lot more salient or easier to identify than a person that might be right in front of me, because maybe there's a lot of distractions going on, or that everybody's going to express their emotions in a different way. But then you want to make sure that you're taking the time to go into real life, pointing it out, whether it's contrived, for example. So I say, hey, you two over there, I want one of you to be happy, and then I'm going to ask the child to see if they can recognize that emotion, because maybe something else is going on that's also making them happy, like you handed them a present. You want to make sure then that you start fading away from the contrivedness of it, so as it's actually occurring in real life, because a lot of times our kids have difficulty generalizing, and just because you teach it from a photo, or I sit here and I say, how do you feel, doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to transfer the skill. It's one of the primary deficits of kids on the spectrum is generalization. So it's very important that we're teaching it at different levels, because ultimately everything that we are teaching them, we want them to be able to use in everyday life. So that eventually we even lead up to, hey, if somebody's on the playground being mean to you, how is that going to make you feel? And they might say, well, it's going to make me angry. Well, what can you do about that in that situation? And then also eventually teaching them, this is what you can say or do in that situation. But again, rehearsing that just in having a conversation is not necessarily going to mean that the child is going to start exhibiting that skill.
Right.
So what I might do then is, for example, let's say we're going on the playground, and I know that it is in the past been a time that the child might get mad at somebody because maybe a child on the playground often always wants a turn.
Right.
And so I might say to the child before we go on the playground, hey, if someone takes the ball away from you, what might you say or do? And so then I'm kind of priming them or coaching them before the situation occurs. Mm-hmm. That's still a prompt, but it's a step towards generalizing the skill into everyday life. Right. But the goal then would be eventually that I don't have to remind them of that before the situation occurs. Right. They will have the scenario occur to them and then immediately know the correct reaction or response that they need to give.
Right. And I can't say it enough. It builds on so many other things. Mm-hmm. Being able to recognize your own emotions, taking other people's perspectives, understanding where they're coming from. So a really worthwhile thing to work on.
Mm-hmm. And absolutely, and especially too because it emerges so early.
Yeah.
But it continues to develop for quite a long period of time too.
Yeah.
So yes, a lot of skills that build on from recognizing emotions of others and also your own emotions as well.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and we're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. It is time for our academic tip of the week, and today I want to talk about sequencing and how important sequencing is for our kids who are preschool and in kindergarten and first grade, and how it builds we take that skill and we build on it throughout life and throughout academic careers. So we're talking about being able to look at things and say, okay, well, for instance, if we take tying your shoes, and for the child to be able to explain to us, well, first I do this, and then I do this, and then I do that, and last I do this, and this all together becomes tying shoes, right? We want to get to the point where a child can take a task and talk about it in that sort of way. But we also want to be able for a child to look at sequencing from a 360-degree perspective. You'll see when your child goes to preschool and eventually to kindergarten that they have tons of worksheets that they'll do with your child where they will, in the beginning it's just pictures, right, that they'll have a picture. I don't know why, but I'm remembering my son in kindergarten and there was a picture of a cat, and the cat was doing something. So first the cat was sitting on a lap, and then the cat did something else, and there were pictures, and they have to cut out the pictures, right, which works on their adaptive skills, and then they have to paste the pictures in the order of which one comes first. Now they start by making it really easy, and then the pictures get harder to sequence, and it becomes more steps, and eventually they do it with text where they have to take a paragraph and figure out which comes first in the paragraph. But we will see that our kids are going to work on sequencing over and over and over again. It is a very basic skill that grows and grows and grows. Now, if you stop and think about it, it has lots of different applications, and this is one of the reasons why they teach this in school that's going to be really helpful. It helps with flexibility of thinking. It helps with planning. For a child to be able to recognize it when somebody else has written it, and then for the child to be able to recognize it when they're writing it, so that something logically makes sense. That if I'm going to explain tying a shoe to somebody and I say, well, first you tie it in a double knot, that doesn't make sense, right? So it helps to put things in order for a child so that when they're explaining it to somebody else, but it also helps for them to get the salient points of what's most important here, and to understand the order of something. If you understand that an order has to be done, that there are steps to something, then you will use the steps more likely when accomplishing something. It sets you up for success in so many different ways. But there is a whole element to it that, it's cognitive thinking, it's executive functions, it involves perspective taking. I mean, it really is a global lesson. So we want to start this really young with our kids, and we want to make sure that they find this reinforcing. I even mentioned that this year, my son, because sometimes our kids have abilities in different areas, right? They're not all Rain Man and have, savants in different areas, but, a lot of times we'll see that where a child has a skill deficit in one area, that usually they're going to have a skill that they're a little bit better at, a little bit more ahead, right? This can be good and this can be to their detriment depending on the situation and how you apply it. And my son is really good in math, but he's at that critical point where he already understands, he's bored and he already understands how to do some things that it's taking other kids a while to do. And other kids are having to get the steps and go through the steps and learn the steps. And my son's like, I can do it in my head. And he could when it was 2 digits. Now that it's 3 and 4 and 5 digits, not so much, right? He needs to be writing it out on paper, which means he has to go back to the steps. So we had to go through sequencing again this year and make it really reinforcing for him to do the steps and make it seem like doing the steps is the place to be. And at least he knew what the concept of steps, well, first I do this, then I do this, and last I do this, because it was something that we worked on for quite a while in quite a variety of ways when he was little. And one of the things that we were asked to do, and again, these lessons are in the skills program. They've got a great deal going right now. Go to Skills Global. You don't have to figure these things out for yourself. They give you the teaching points. It's really kind of amazing. And also want to remind you that it isn't one size fits all. You take an assessment and it says, here are the sets of lessons that we would recommend for your child. And then they let you pick what you feel is important. But the sequencing, I got to tell you, is important for lots of different reasons. But one of the things that they asked us to do when we started working on sequencing was, again, to take out our digital camera. The digital camera will be one of your best friends while your child is working on these different things. Excuse me. And they gave us a couple of different things that they wanted us to take pictures of in different sequences. It really was a very interesting project for my husband and I, and we used our son because there is something about it that's that much more rewarding to them when it's them or somebody they know, right? So we took pictures. I still have them someplace, but we took pictures of all the things that you need to do to put on your shoes. So first we started, and I had to think through, okay, what do I need to do to have a pictorial view of putting on your shoes? So first we took the picture of my son's bare feet, and then we took a picture of him with one sock on and the other sock just starting to cover the toes to show, okay, we're putting on socks. And then we took a picture of the shoe going on, right? And then the picture of the shoe in process tying, and then a picture of both feet and we took a bunch of different pictures, right? And in the beginning, they made it really simple. And we did this with other activities too. We did it with making the bed. We did it with brushing teeth. We did it in a very PC way with getting dressed so that he was never standing there with nothing on, right? In a picture. But, first he was in the pajamas and then, he was in, had shorts, but not his shirt on, and then his shirt on. So lots of different things. We did it with making lunch. We did it with going to the park. There were probably 10 different things that we took pictures of. And there were multiple steps, but in the beginning, they didn't use all the steps. So for putting shoes on, they might have started with the bare feet and then the socks and then the shoes being on, so that he would say, well, and they would prompt him through first, my feet are bare, and then I put my socks on, and then I put my shoes on, right? And then they started, as he got this, and they would just point, eventually they fade prompted, so they would point and he would say first, and it was very specific things that he was learning. Okay, well, I do this and I do this and I do that, right? Great. And then they added more steps to it. So, first I do this, and there were more detailed pictures so that he would get to first I do this and then I do that and last I do this. I think I just turned my computer off. I have no idea what I did. In any case, if you lost me for a second on the ability to answer questions, I have no idea. My computer just completely went off on me. We'll figure that out. But in any case, sequencing is an amazing tool because not only is it going to help your child to be able to talk to you about what's happening, so that when you say, oh, well, what did you do with the babysitter tonight? They're going to be able to tell you, well, we did this, we did that, we did whatever. Yeah, I did. I totally turned myself off the computer. I have no idea how I did that. But they're also, it's going to help build language skills, but it's going to help them to understand so that when you say to them, well, they say, okay, are we going to the park? Yes, but first we're going to go to the bank, and then we're going to go to the store, and then we're going to go to the park. They begin to get those relations for things happening. And it's a really exciting thing. It's going to help them so much academically, and you will see that it's something that they work on in preschool. It's something they work on in kindergarten, and even, this year in third grade, the sequencing had taken on a whole other aspect. So they were working on developing an argument, which is going to help them to write essays down the road. Really amazing to see the skill start so young and grow into something that's going to help them on their SATs. So, and then all throughout life. So sequencing, something that we can work on this summer. Get out your digital camera, check it out in skills. It's a really fun lesson that really helps them to be prepared for kindergarten. When I think about my son and the sequencing, he blazed through that. And I know that why he did was because he'd already had that for 2 years at home with ABA therapy. Really helps our kids to excel. So work on the sequencing. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about challenging behavior and seeing it as communication. And I'm going to log back onto my computer, so stick with us.
Mostly the behavior started at night, but it was invading the day where he would just speak one syllable and babble and pace around.
When she was a year old, she lost speech. She did never seem to request me for anything, even for food. He told me over the phone that I should just put her in an institution. I was devastated. What's an institution? A hospital. Yeah, isn't that nice?
He told me that it was possible or likely that Ruffin would never be employed, that he would never work productively, that he would not know that I loved him, nor would he love me, nor would he be likely to marry.
There's a 50% chance that he won't be able to talk at all, but if he does talk, he will only be able to, make simple desire requests. I want, things like that. And probably by the time he was 10, he'd be in a home.
Doreen told me that he would recover, and Doreen told me that he would go to regular kindergarten.
I really have a very normal kid now, and lots of normal worries, but not extraordinary ones.
My name is Deli Popola, and I'm one of the creators of TheOutSpot.com. TheOutSpot.com is an online support system for families and specialists who are affected by autism across the whole world. Share inspirational stories, find resources in their area. Hope you can join.
Welcome back to Autism Live. It's Friday. It's a great day for us as we're looking at this weekend coming up to talk and have a refresher about challenging behavior. We talk about this from time to time, and we haven't talked a lot about challenging behavior this week because we've been talking about maintaining progress, but I think it's a part of the conversation. We can't maintain progress if we have challenging behavior get in the way. And I have heard a lot of people, including myself, mentioning that with the change in the schedule and the change in the weather and the change that's happening right now, that a lot of our kids are engaging in behavior that is not the same as they were engaging 2 weeks ago, which is invariably going to lead to some challenging behavior. It kind of just follows, doesn't it? We set up a routine and we're doing the routine, and as much as we all find a routine boring and mundane at times, when something happens that disrupts the mundane, while it's exciting for a minute, there is always a little bit of a payoff in the challenging. A payoff. What's the opposite of a payoff? There's a check to be paid that we pay for it in some way. Isn't that true for us? You know, I just had a wonderful time, and I had family that was here visiting and friends that were here visiting, and it was really, really reinforcing, and it really broke up the rituals of the week. But I'm extra tired, and I even, you know, certainly had a couple of days where I was extra crabby because I was extra tired. And we can't have an expectation for us or for our kids that when we change things up, that there isn't going to be something that comes as a result of that, right? So our kids are either you finished school 2 weeks ago, or you finished school last week, or you're finishing school this week. There is going to be a change in their schedule, whether it's that they're still going to camp or whatever, but there's a change. And when things change for us, we get a little discombobulated, right? Don't we? Isn't that the truth? Tell me if I'm wrong. But it seems like that's what everybody is telling me lately. And I know that's definitely true for me, and it's definitely true for our household, that we just get a little wonky. And as a result, for some of our kids, that is going to lead to some challenging behavior. What do I mean by challenging behavior? Anything that gets in the way of them learning, anything that gets in the way of them being able to reach their highest potential, anything that gets in the way of you enjoying your life to the fullest and being safe, and having a good interaction with your child, right? And on different days, different things, right? So, you know, on some days, my son, you know, if there's a little bit of humming, it's not the end of my world, it's not the end of his world. But there are days when his humming can get to a level and a pitch and a frequency, I mean, like, you know, the megahertz frequency, but also the amount of time frequency, where it gets in the way of what I'm doing, it gets in the way of what he's doing, and then it crosses over into challenging behavior. You know, kids who bite, kids who engage in violent behavior, all of those things can be challenging behavior. Getting up out of bed 22 times can be challenging behavior, right? So we're talking about the full gamut. You know, think about what's on your wish list of behaviors that your child engages in, and what would you like to not have to deal with anymore. That's what we're talking about when we talk about challenging behavior. All of our kids have challenging behavior to some extent, right? On the spectrum, not on the spectrum. But we can change behavior. But we have to start to look at it first and recognize it as behavior and not a personal affront, right? There are times when, and I am guilty of this. I say to my child, you know, you got to be in bed by 9:15, and it's 9:45, and he's up telling me that he now, you know, remembers that he has to write this note or do this thing for school. And at that point, I am, you know, trying to get to bed myself, and I do think of it as my personal failure, and that he's deliberately doing it to me, right? And it's a measure of me being tired. And then I have to remind myself, this is behavior, and this behavior is communication. What is my child trying to communicate? Because if I can let go of all the other emotional things that are going on and just look clearly and go, this is not about me, this is behavior. What is he trying to communicate to me? What is it that he wants? What is he trying to get? Is it something that I want to give to him anyway? Or is it something that I need to redirect? What is happening in this moment? It's all communication. I don't know about you, but for me, when I can let go of the emotion and go, wait a second, it's just communication, I can find it easier to deal with it. We always talk about that emotional divorce. And for me, I can't speak for you, but for me, that's what does it when I go, oh, he's just trying to communicate something to me. Then it just strips everything else away and I can look at the actual behavior. And we talk about on the show all the time that there's usually 4 main suspects of what's going on in that individual moment, that our kids engage in challenging behavior to get attention. And sometimes, it seems to us that can't possibly be, because all it does is bring negative attention. Except remember, for our kids, attention is attention is attention. It does not matter if it's positive attention or you yelling at them, it's attention, right? Sometimes it's because they want access to someone or something, and that's why they're engaging in the behavior. And you might think, yeah, but it doesn't work. But it must on some level if they keep doing it, right? Sometimes they engage in challenging behavior to escape someone or something. Think about, bedtime, and, they don't want to be in there by themselves. And if they can come out and say, Mom, and you go, cat back in bed, they still escaped it for that 3 seconds that they came out and had that brief interaction with you, and they got some attention. And we will talk about the fact that a lot of times it can have multiple. But so escape is one of the things that they want to do. And then, of course, the last one, which is the most difficult one to look at, and a lot of times it can be the most difficult one to fix, is when they're engaging in the behavior because there's something about it that feels good, that is in some way reinforcing to them on some level internally, and that's the hardest one, I think, for me. But and again, as I just mentioned, sometimes it can be a combo platter. Right? But I think that if we take a moment when the child is engaging in challenging behavior, and let's realize we talked about this full gamut of challenging behavior, so there are some things that are more serious in the moment than other things, right? If your child is doing something annoying, that can get to the point where it's fairly serious, right? But it's vastly different than if your child is cutting themselves or throwing, dangerous implements at you, right? If you are in the neighborhood of things that are potentially dangerous for you or your child or somebody else, it's really time to get help. Don't try to figure it out yourself at all. You're going to waste time, and you're going to put people in jeopardy while you waste the time. You wouldn't try to fix your own brakes, I'm guessing, unless you were a brake expert. Don't try to fix severe challenging behavior on your own. It's time to call in a BCBA and ask them to find the function of the behavior and give you a behavior intervention plan. It doesn't take as long as you think. It doesn't cost as much money as you think. It will be worth it. It will be worth it. Make sure that you find a BCBA who has experience with autism and has experience with the kind of challenging behavior you're dealing with. But do that. Do yourself that favor. And if it's something that you can't afford, will you do me a favor and write to me and tell me, that you're in a place so that I can help you to find some funding sources that will pay for that BCBA. But don't delay. Don't put it off. Don't say, well, it will get better on its own. When has that ever happened? It won't. Chances are that it will get worse. And if you're in something that's already really debilitating for you or your child, don't mess around with it. Seriously. If it's something that's just flat annoying, you have the option, if you don't have already access to a BCBA, if you have a team of ABA people that are working with your child, let them know this is what is challenging to us right now. It's new behavior, it's old behavior, whatever it is. Let them know and let them help you. Don't be silent about that. But if you don't, and it's something that's just annoying, try to stop and think, okay, my child's trying to communicate to me in some way. What is it my child's trying to communicate? What is it about this behavior that has a paycheck? And can I change something beforehand? Because if your child is trying to communicate to you and say, if what they're really saying to you is, I am not getting enough of your attention, then there is a whole day in which you can shower the attention, but when it gets to bedtime, you can say, I'm not giving attention to this behavior because it's making the behavior continue, right? But you could give a whole bunch of attention earlier, and then in this instance, not give the attention, right? Or if it's that they're trying to escape something, you say, why? What is it about You know, is it the dark? Do I just need to put in a nightlight so that it's less aversive? You know, you can start to try to problem solve with those kinds of things. But for the bigger things, please don't try to do it yourself. It leads to nothing but heartache. It is so worth the time, effort, and the amount of money that it takes to have somebody come in, look at the behavior, and help you to figure out what the function is with the right intervention plan so that you can turn it around. And that's my word on that this week. It is time for the A word. When the A word is over, we're going to be joined by Evelyn Gould to talk about the question that we had yesterday. But let's take a look at Jack Riley. If you watch the show, you know the A word is this amazing documentary that's being made here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. It's an ongoing documentary. We're watching a little boy who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. His name is Jack Riley. He is not yet 3 in the episode that we're going to watch, but he's been having ABA therapy for about 7 months, and he's made tremendous progress. He's starting to work with a new therapist. So they're doing what's called an overlap, where his senior therapist is there, and a very new person who is fresh out of class is coming to actually put into practice what she has been learning. She's gonna make mistakes. We all do. But watch as she maintains a sense of humor and as she learns how to interact with Jack Riley. This is the A word.
Whoa, happy feet there. Are you excited? Wow. Can I have a kiss? Thank you. He did tell Miss Miriam yesterday that he said poopies. She came and got me. We looked, there was none there, so we thought he was telling us stories. And 2 minutes later, there were.
Oh.
Wow. You did it, didn't you?
That's exciting.
She's always a new therapist and is having an overlap with Jessica. She will be doing fieldwork training until she is ready to independently work with a child. In order for She's Away to work independently, she must first pass a theory-based test, which is her knowledge of autism, and then second, she must pass a field evaluation, which is an overlap where she applies what she has learned.
If I want to do actions, then it looks like we're just doing maintenance right now.
Do the ones that he already has mastered.
And that's in a separate bag. Okay.
Yeah. And then you would just be asking, what is the little boy doing? The boy's playing.
Okay.
It should be his answer.
Okay. Jack Riley, my name is She's Away.
Say, hi, she's away.
Hi, she's away.
Oh, very good. Give me a high five. Yeah. Okay, so Jack, what would you like to do after we do a program? Would you like bubbles?
Puzzle.
Oh, puzzle? Okay, we can do puzzle.
Since we're using the puzzle as a reinforcer, don't give it to him yet
right.
until you do the program. Because now he's like, well, I already got the
Right,
puzzle,
yeah,
so
why should I?
Why should
Okay.
it work?
What is the boy doing?
He's sitting.
Yeah! Oh, good! One sticker. What is this man doing?
What's it to?
Yeah! What is she doing?
He's kicking.
Yeah!
Hey, good job.
What is he doing?
He's Buzz Lightyear positive.
Yeah, that was great.
So bring up some other ones.
He's Buzz Lightyear.
What are they doing?
She's hugging.
Yes, they're hugging.
Are you taking data as you're going along?
Yeah.
Okay.
What is he doing?
He's sleeping.
Oh, yeah, you're so good.
He's sleeping.
So make sure you write the
The
stimuli,
stimuli,
too.
yeah. It's like, I don't want to take too much time. Should I just be quick with it?
Yeah.
Okay. What are they doing?
He's playing.
Yeah, they're playing. Good job, Jack.
Play a box.
They are playing blocks. You're so smart.
What is he doing?
He's playing.
Yeah, another one.
Play a box.
He's playing blocks too.
He's playing a car.
He's playing cars. That's right.
What is she doing?
He's waving.
Yeah. What are they doing?
He's waving.
Yeah, you finished. Good job, Jack Riley. Give me high fives. Can you do high fives? Yes. Okay. You ready to play with your puzzle? Okay, here.
Where's the cow? Where's the cow? Oh, good job. What does he say?
What does the cow say? What is it?
Moo.
Hi, monkey. You want a pillow sandwich? Okay, go get me the pillows. Will you show Shizu how we do your pillow sandwich?
I want to see this pillow sandwich.
Okay, ready? One. Hold on. Can you let go? Hold on. 1, 2, 3. Ah! Squish! Pillow sandwich. It's a pillow sandwich. And here we get there's a lot of opportunities for him to ask for things. Like if he wants more of jumping, more of pillow sandwiches. It's called man training.
Oh.
So what we're doing is we're giving him frames because he knows that I want and give me, but we're trying to teach him a new frame, which is can I have something. So how we prompt him is something that he really, really wants, like pillow sandwiches or having you pick him up or something.
Okay.
And I've been prompting him with a partial verbal with just the cup, and he knows to say, "Can I?"
Okay.
So I mean, we could track that later, but this is just one of the opportunities that you can use to to do that program. Do you want more? When you say, "Can I?" Yes, you can have pillow sandwich. Come here. Crash! After say can.
Okay, come here. Let me see you. Oh, how fun is that?
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We are joined right now by the fabulous Evelyn Gould, who's looking very spring and summery today. You look quite lovely.
It's turning into summer, so I'm trying to wear my summer dress.
You're very, very pretty today. I'm feeling all fall. I don't know what I have going on here today. But in any case, we usually have you on the show on Wednesdays at 10 o'clock. And we had somebody write in on Wednesday night with a question, because we ask you guys to do that whenever you have a question. And I talked about it a little bit from my perspective yesterday as a parent, but I really wanted to have your perspective, because I think you see things clearer sometimes about parenting than I do. I think that's an amazing talent that you have, and so I'm always thrilled to have you come in. But anyway, I want to read the question again. My question was, if you could give any advice or techniques to helping my wife keep her cool during the difficult times with our son. Our son is almost 5. He was diagnosed as having autism spectrum disorder. His biggest challenges seem to be speech delay and controlling his excitement in public situations and frustration from not being able to communicate his feelings to us or others, I feel. They go on to say, my wife and son have seemed to hit a wall with each other when they both seem to get aggravated. When this happens, my wife usually calls me in to deal with him, or she loses her temper and doesn't deal with the situation properly and yells at him to take a timeout or etc. With the unnecessary yelling and avoiding the situation by turning it over to me, I feel has been leading to another bigger problem between them. It seems like my son is beginning to lose respect for his mother's authority, which is just leading to a vicious cycle. Your help is greatly appreciated. And so I talked about it a little bit from a parent perspective yesterday. And again, I want to say, and we said this at the top of the show, but I want to remind everybody that it would be so disrespectful if we imagined that just from a paragraph that anyone, myself, and I'm not an expert, and you as a BCBA would understand exactly what's happening, that we never want to be in a position where we're like, well, it's this, because, there's so many different scenarios, and we want to be mindful of the fact that we're not there with you. So,
like, in order to give, to find proper solutions, I would have to go out to these people's home and, walk through their everyday interactions with their kid and observe what's going on with the kid, and also talk to the parent about what's coming up for you right now, what are you feeling, what are you thinking, and once I figure all that stuff out, then I would be able to give specific advice. So we can't give specific advice from just a paragraph, but we can talk about a few general things that might help.
Yeah.
And there's a lot going on. I mean, first of all, it looks like this mother is really struggling with an emotional stuff that's going on, and that her interaction with her son are bringing up really strong feelings, and she probably has a whole bunch of very unhelpful patter going on in her head, and perhaps some not very helpful rules that are going on, like I'm not good enough, I'm not doing a good job, and also in relation judgments in relation to her son, like why is he doing this to me? Why does he have to do this every time? Or why can't he just respond to me?
Right.
Why am I so inept and feeling helpless and feeling
all
out
of
of
those
control? And all of those things are probably going on.
And we should say too, and I was saying this yesterday, that there would be nothing shocking about that's not in any way surprising or out of the norm, that, you know, I would think that the vast majority of us have at least a moment where we're thinking some of those
Absolutely,
things.
and that's why I'm commenting on it, because this is the type of stuff that comes up for everybody.
Yes.
That's what our minds do.
Yeah.
We like to generate a constant stream of judgments about ourselves and our situations, and some very unhelpful blabber, for want of a better word, that goes on, and it's very difficult for us to not just take that as truth and react to it.
Right.
So I think that there's that issue, and so finding ways for her to help kind of deal with all of that stuff, emotional stuff that's going on. And then there's the interactions with her son. So let's talk about that a little bit first.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
So the kind of ABA practical stuff that she could try and do with her son, and her husband could help her with this. And I think it'd be really helpful to maybe try for her to, if she's able to, avoid negative interactions with her son for a while and go back to spending, like, perhaps you could schedule some quality time with her son every day where it's just about her and her son having a nice time and interacting without any demands. So there's no expectation, so you're not trying to get out the door to school, or you're not trying to get the dinner ready or anything like that. It's just purely time for you and your son to play together or do whatever he likes, and there should be a lot of reinforcement going on and just enjoying each other's company. And that way you're kind of pairing yourself with non-demand time with your son, and then you can also start to pay attention to the things that you really value about your son and value about your time with him. So I think that's really, really important. And then going right back to the beginning, we talked about this on Wednesday, this compliance building, and going right back to just interacting with your son, asking him only to do things that you know he's going to do, and then you're able to reinforce him, and then he's able to be successful, and then you're kind of rebuilding your relationship with him. And only having positive interactions.
I think that's so important, Evelyn, and I think you just touched on something that's really important for whoever is doing the main share of the homekeeping, because it's not always the mom in all situations. But I just was having a conversation with somebody the other day about my expectations of parenting and my husband's expectations of parenting, and my husband was terrified. He had never been around kids before, and he was so afraid that he was going to be this dull, too old dad who wasn't going to roll on the floor. And I said, it's exactly the opposite. That he rolls on the floor with my son, and that they have a party, and that I'm the dull disciplinarian parent. And this friend of mine was saying, that's just shocking to me from you, and why is that the case? And I said, well, because, you know, I got laundry to do, and I got dishes to do, and that I don't remember to take enough time that where I take demands off of myself and say, no, this is just my time with my son, and there's absolutely nothing that can interrupt it. You know, nothing in the house. I'm not doing 8 things at once. I'm just being with him. And I think that's a common thing that as caregivers we do.
Absolutely.
And that we could all benefit from that, of saying there's, you know, this amount of time, whether it's 5 minutes or an hour a day, that we don't have anything else but interacting with our child.
I mean, I think that applies to any relationship.
Yeah.
You know, you really need to plan that time whenever you're not trying to get stuff done, or you're not playing these different roles. It's just you and your partner, or you and your child, just being with each other. And
or checking email on the phone, right? Isn't that a big thing now? You know, saying this time, you know, there's absolutely nothing else, including checking, you know, Facebook and internet and things like that.
And the other thing as well is that we kind of get into a rut of only noticing negative things and reacting to them. And so I think spending some time every day and having the space to just practice noticing the good and noticing things that your child does that you really like or appreciate, and like almost making lists of the things that you appreciate. And I actually did this exercise even with myself not that long ago with a partner where I felt very in a rut, and then I just started doing this appreciation kind of work, and it really helps. It really helps to change how you then approach that person.
Yeah.
And that's almost like as well like an antecedent kind of modification, because then you're approaching your interactions with the person without like already anticipating aggravation, and you aren't carrying around already simmering kind of resentment or anything like that. I don't know. I'm not saying that that's what's happening here with this lady and her child, but it's just working on that, noticing the good and the appreciation, and thinking about all the wonderful things about another person really help kind of you approach them in a different way.
Yeah, and you gotta, and I think you gotta start that however you possibly can. There's a lovely quote that my mother used to do about my nephew when he was little, that whenever, because he was a wonderful baby, but you know, you would get to a point where he would be tearing the house apart, and then it would be time for him to go to sleep, and my mother would always say, oh, he was a lovely boy, but his mother never loved him more than when he was asleep. You know what I mean? And it's from some old poem, but even if it's a moment of when your child is asleep, taking a moment and looking at them.
It can be very difficult when you first start trying to do that. If you're in this really awful place and you're stuck feeling really terrible and your relationship is really difficult, it can be hard to actually try and find good things. It really can, but you just trying to think of like even the smallest things and the littlest things, and if you give yourself a time and to sit and do it every day, it can really be helpful. And then of course if you increase the reinforcement, so if you do see something that your child or your partner or whatever does that you like, reinforcing them for that, and that makes everyone feel good. So increasing the reinforcement in your life is going to make you feel better and all your relationships better. So that's why I think like spending that time with your kid, just having kid time and me time, and then also building compliance up, so asking your kid to do something which they're definitely going to do, and then reinforcing them for that, and then you can gradually build that up and do it as much as possible, and you'll start to feel more confident and better and confident, and like you're giving your child reinforcement, so you feel better about yourself, and then your child's going to cooperate better with you, and you're building that compliance and so on, and pairing yourself with reinforcement. I mean, even with our programs with our kids, usually when therapists start, they spend a lot of time just playing with the kid, and we just want the kid to associate them with no demands and lots of fun and reinforcement, and parents don't get the opportunity to do that. Really, they're just thrown in the deep end, and you have a life that you have to run, but it really works if you approach it that way. So maybe taking it right back, where if it's possible, if dad can be the demand placing person for a while and let mom just do fun stuff and re-establish that trust and that kind of reinforcing relationship with her son, that could really help. And you know, it's important to say too that this could easily be on the other foot, and I think I was saying that in our family that there have been times when I've been, for lack of a better word, the bad guy that was constantly the disciplinarian, and then the shoe would be on the other foot, and you know, he's home in the morning now with dads, and I'll come home and he's like, wow, you know, dad, this and whatever, and I got, you know, it's a constant balancing act when there's two people who are parenting between who's the bad guy and who's the good guy, but that everybody should take a turn doing discipline, because you get into trouble otherwise. So looking at the balance, and I think that that's a really good tip, Evelyn. Yeah, and then the other stuff, of course, is dealing with all the stuff that's going on in your head and these difficult emotions, and putting yourself in a place where you're coming to an interaction that might be problematic with your son, and being able to react effectively and you be more effective in your parenting in that moment whenever your kid's doing something that's very provocative to you. So I think in terms of that, we had talked about ACT on the show before, this acceptance commitment therapy, and it's really amazing, and I would recommend that this parent, maybe there's a book by Russ Harris, The Reality Gap, and it's a very easy to read introduction to ACT, but it basically is going to help you identify what the problematic and unhelpful thoughts that you're having, or any rules that you're following about yourself or your child that are not helpful. It's going to take those and give you strategies to be able to distance yourself from them. we had talked about on the show how when you're in a crisis or in a really stressful situation, your vision kind of tunnels, like you're looking down the tube, you know, you're kind of looking through and only seeing this tiny, tiny bit of the picture, and that makes you very ineffective because you are kind of inflexible and you've only got a few choices of how you're going to respond to that tiny bit of information that's there. Whereas if you can open up and see the entire situation and the bigger picture and stay in contact with kind of what really matters to you, you have a lot more options for how you're going to respond to the situation, if that makes any sense. So what ACT helps you do is kind of open up and be able to look around and kind of give you some distance from those really difficult things that are coming into your head, so you can see more clearly what your options are, and you can detach from those difficult things, and it helps you make room for all those feelings and everything. So you're freeing yourself up to make better parenting choices. And I think if you practice these things enough, these kind of, they call it diffusion, this distancing from your thoughts and your feelings. It's not making them go away. It's like having them there and accepting that they're there, and that's okay. It's just kind of empowering you to act effectively in spite of them. So even though you're having these angry feelings and everything, you can have them and still not react to them.
Right.
You can react to the situation instead of to your feelings.
Not be at the mercy of them.
Exactly. And over time then you'll find that you can kind of put yourself in a better place even before the situation happens, and hopefully then you don't end up in a confrontational situation, or you're able to see the situation clearly and plan better, maybe even like anticipate a problem and problem solve ways to avoid it or to prevent it from happening and so on. So I think that I would highly recommend that she...
Okay. And it's called again?
The book?
Yeah.
It's called The Reality Gap, and it's by Russ Harris. I have given my copy to someone else because otherwise I would have brought it so you could see the picture of it. You can get it on Amazon.
And again, he is someone who...
He's a specialist in ACT. He is a doctor and he lives in Australia, and he actually has a child with autism himself.
Right, which is coincidental.
It's coincidental. He was an expert in this field before his child was diagnosed, but it just so happens that his child was diagnosed and he wrote this book, which is an ACT book, and he talks a lot about his experiences of having a child with autism, and I think that means that it's especially relevant for our
it's
parents.
Amazing. Quite a gift
it's
for
really
us.
wonderful, compassionate book. It's very good about teaching you self-compassion, which I think also is really important, and it's very comforting, I think, to read. And it's very easy and very short.
Okay, so really important, and I think it's so important to recognize that I think that all of us at some moment are going to feel overwhelmed on this journey. And, and yet we can all point to a time in our lives when something overwhelming happened, but we felt like we could cope, right? And this whole thing that you've described about getting that tunnel vision, I think it really aptly describes what it's like to find out that your child is diagnosed and to see the kinds of things that you're going to have to be facing, because you do feel like your choices go, okay, we have autism, we're looking through the autism tunnel.
And it's very easy to just see the gap. That is the reality gap. It's like a gaping black hole, and if you're looking down the tunnel, all you can see is the black hole. And so what this book and ACT tries to do is to help you see, yes, that black hole is there, and that's not going away, but look at all this massive stuff all around it. You have this wonderful world that's all around it. So the gap is still there, but it's not, your world isn't just the gap.
Right. I think that's a really important thing for us to hear, and if we can think back to a time when we did have something that was overwhelming or stressful and that we felt better and were coping, you can imagine that there's a way that you can cope with this as well, and to find that distance. Again, I love this idea of we're not poo-pooing it, we're not saying it's not there, but finding a way to get to a place where it's not this unrelenting, jackhammer in your head that it's the only thing, to be able to see a bigger picture. It's much more hopeful. So absolutely love it. The Reality Gap by Russ Harris.
Yes.
Okay. You can get that on Amazon. So wonderful, wonderful advice for all of us when we're feeling stressed and overwhelmed. And I also mentioned too that I think it's awesome that this dad wrote in. There's a lot that sounds to me, there are good things that are happening, that the dad recognizes it. I also think it's great that the mom has recognized the times when she needed him to step in.
Absolutely, it's very important.
Yeah, that, it's important for us to tag team. And I know some of the things that I was saying yesterday, I'd love your opinion about, that I was saying, for the dad to kind of track, when is this happening? When are we getting to the point where it's overwhelming? Because maybe there's some stuff that he can do beforehand, because as a mom in these situations, I have no idea if there is a pattern to when it happens, but I know for me personally, dinner time is the most stressful time of the day for me. My child is there saying, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry. The sun is setting, so everybody's I swear, everybody's a little more on edge during that time of day. My husband has come home and he wants to talk to me and I want to tell him about the day, but my child is there. It's like the noisiest time in the neighborhood, and I got 3 things that I'm cooking, trying to focus on, and really what I would like is 10 minutes of quiet.
Yeah.
So I am set up in that moment of the day that if I'm not careful, I could handle things in a way that I don't want to handle them. And there were times along the way when we were doing intensive ABA in the home that was always when the therapists were leaving. So they're trying to have a conversation with me too. So I just felt like I was being pulled apart. And I had to get to the point where I said to my husband, I need, when this happens, for you to take him for a walk. Come home and we'll all sit down and eat dinner. I just need 10 minutes to myself.
Yeah, it's really important definitely to observe and be a behaviour analyst about it and look at what's happening and why it's happening. And then thinking about ways that you can anticipate problems, and so you can kind of manipulate those triggers and so on, and see what you can do about that. But I really do think that it's worth having for this mom to have some time to kind of go backwards and rebuild her relationship with her son without pressure, and not having to put demands that she is immediately feeling stressed about, or ending up getting in a confrontation with her kid, because they've obviously, it seems like they've got into kind of a reciprocal kind of cycle of winding each other up kind of thing for whatever reason. I mean, I don't know what the function is of any of the behaviors, so
but it's easy enough to do,
seems like a cycle
that you can get into that thing. And I actually think that's great advice for all of us, to find some time in the day when we're not putting demands on the child, where we're just enjoying the child and the child's enjoying us and enjoying that interaction. I think that's really, I want to go home and do that this weekend. And
there's never any harm either in practicing the compliance stuff, like asking your kid to do stuff that they can be successful at and you can reinforce them for. That feels good.
Yeah, and you could do that at any age. They could be 3 or 35, and you could be asking them to do that.
And it's reinforcing for, if someone asks me to do something that I know I can do and I do it, it's great. I feel great, they feel great. It's like a really nice way of building relationships with people.
Yeah, and it's a great way of getting out of a rut too, of where feeling like it's all swimming around the edge of the toilet.
And again, obviously looking for the good, or trying to catch your kid being good, and focusing in on that and reinforcing having an interaction with them in that moment.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much for coming in and sharing all that with us. I hope that was really helpful for all of us. I got a lot out of that, so thank you for taking the time when we don't normally have you on Fridays. But we will have Evelyn back in next Wednesday, and we really appreciate when you guys write in with your questions, and we will also be sending back a written response to this dad. Stick with us. We're going to take a break, and we're going to come back and talk about some other stuff this week, and also our I totally lost the train of thought. Our viewer questions of the day. That's what I want to say. The words flew out of my mind. The viewer questions of the day. We asked you how you're going to keep your child maintaining progress over the summer. We're going to come back and talk about that. But don't forget, at 11 o'clock, we're going to be joined by Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. So stick with us.
Skills is a revolutionary web-based program that incorporates comprehensive assessment, curriculum design, progress tracking, and treatment evaluation for children with autism all in one place. self-developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Our approach is based on over 40 years of research on the principles of learning and their application to improving the lives of children with autism. How does Skills work? Created with speed and simplicity in mind, Skills was modeled on an easy 3-step process. Step 1. Start assessment. Step 1 begins with our intelligent assessment system, which consists of a series of questions. This assessment is essential to identifying your child's level of skills compared to their typical peers across all areas of development. This includes assessing social, motor, language, adaptive, play, cognition, executive functions, and academic skills. Every skill has an assigned age, which indicates when the skill emerges during typical development. This means that each child is automatically presented only with lessons that are relevant to his or her age. Step 2. Choosing activities. It's now easier than ever to build an individualized treatment plan. In Step 2, you are presented with an individualized pool of activities that are directly linked to your student's assessment results. Each activity represents a specific skill that has been indicated by the assessment as needing to be taught. Activities are categorized by curriculum and then by lesson. There are 3 main types of skills: building blocks, fundamental, and expansion skills. Fundamental skills are necessary for successful everyday functioning. Building blocks are prerequisites to a fundamental skill. Expansion skills are non-essential skills, but may provide further enrichment in certain areas. After reviewing the activities available to you, you can quickly add your chosen activities to the treatment plan by simply checking the box and clicking the button. Step 3. Start treatment. Once you have selected and added the activities you want, you are ready to begin teaching. Skills provides you with all the tools necessary to design and manage an effective curriculum plan, such as printable activity guides that are customizable by the teacher, supplemental teaching aids including printable data sheets, teaching guides, visual aids, worksheets, and tracking forms, detailed IEP goals and benchmarks for each activity, brief and visually appealing video tutorials, a variety of treatment progress and clinical timeline charts, and lots more. And since Skills is completely web-based, everything you need is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in one easy-to-access location. Skills users even benefit from unlimited access to a support community, where they can ask questions and share ideas with a skills expert. Skills is always with you.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. It's the time of day when we talk about your responses to our question of the day. Our question today was, how do you plan to keep your child progressing over the summer? So some of the things that you wrote in, one person said, our son is in preschool. We met with his teacher before the year was out to be briefed on his current programs and progress. She sent us home with materials to work on and run programs over the next 2.5 weeks until his summer program begins. Another person said, with one-on-one work and by keeping the routine as close to the same as possible. I think that's a good plan. It's really hard. Another person said, I've started tutoring for him so he can at least maintain what he has learned. Another who says, my son will go to summer camp with his professional assistant. Another person who says, I have my son in the ARC summer camp, I'm not familiar with that, program, and an art class program. He reads every day. So important to be doing summer reading with our kids. it's a great idea where whatever their level they're at, if they're at a place where they can do a chapter book, either you reading it or having them read or trading off. If they're not at a place for chapter books, sometimes even with really small kids, you can read something. Sometimes if they're very visual, you want to pick something that they already know the story for so that they're intrigued and listening to it instead of watching the story. You can get books that go with Disney movies. You can be watching it at the same time. It really starts to tune their ear to be able to listen to people, that receptive language, to hear a story, really valuable skills that come with having them read and you reading to them. They say that when they're little, we're supposed to be reading to them at least a half an hour a day. And, that can be hard to schedule, but it's well worth it. Another person who says broadening her horizons with new experiences and old traditions that are just about being a kid in the summer, and then off to a summer program. Another person who says, I was just going to let him run loose around the house, throwing chairs and terrorizing the other kids. You want to try to keep their home routine as similar to the school as possible. LOL. Nah, I'm trying to enroll them in classes, but money is tight. Money is tight, and I want to remind you that ACT Today, Autism Care and Treatment Today, is about to enter another grant phase, on July 1st. Now, I think it goes from July 1st to July 30th with the grants happening in August, so that's going to be too late for this summer, but something to keep in mind for next summer to be sort of ahead of the curve. But you also might want to look into, when you're looking at a summer program, don't be afraid to ask. I know people, and I personally have asked before about, do you have a discount for, because a lot of times we want to send an aid and, so it can be double expenses. So I can remember a couple years ago, I really wanted my son to take summer swimming lessons. And I called and I asked, and I said, do you have anything special that you do for kids on the autism spectrum? And they said, as a matter of fact, we discount one-on-one lessons 50%. I said, well, that's pretty fabulous, right? And sometimes there are, I know with this economy, it's less and less, but city programs, community programs, and even through your school, a couple of summers ago, I didn't know until somebody else told me to ask that I could ask for my son to get OT over the summer in the pool. So they actually worked on swimming skills and other things in the pool over the summer. It was a really great thing, and I didn't pay anything at all. But it's knowing which question to ask, when to ask it, who to ask, right? Sometimes you don't even know the question to ask or who to ask it, but this is another reason why having your local support group is so important. I always advocate a local support group and a more global support group. Go on your local support group and say, I really want to do summer camp. What's the best deal? Who gives a discount? How did you guys get summer camp funded? Because there's probably some mom or dad who has already been there and done that where you live and can give you clues as to how you get things paid for. I always find out after the fact, and we had Joey Travolta in with us in the studio, and he was mentioning that his inclusion films program is regional center funded, and here in California, that was how my son got all of his services, was regional center funding, and I didn't know that I could have been sending him to a film inclusion camp. Really? I had no idea. So ask and say, what's everybody else doing? What does anybody else know about? Worst comes to worst, you get no information and you're right where you left off, but a lot of times you're going to get some answers that are going to blow your mind. Another person who says, my child, age 8 old, was refused at the holiday center because of his handicap, and I will have to take care of him myself by making him various activities on the beach and games. And I don't know if this is the same parent who wrote in yesterday and said that. I want to know where this holiday center is, because I want to call them up and find out why they're not taking kids with autism. So if you're watching and you know what that is, would you please let me know, because we can put some pressure on that. What's that about, right? I get mad about that kind of thing. I really, really do. I've told the story before about my son. When he was being diagnosed, we had just joined our local YMCA. We joined on the 2nd of January, and I think my son was diagnosed on the 11th or the 16th. I'd have to look at a calendar to remember. So, 2 weeks later, and my son got a diagnosis. And we had been taking him and putting him in the child care while we worked. We thought it would be a great thing for him to be around other kids and be really helpful to him. It was one of the things that we were told, don't seclude him, and we had been. They said, get out, you have to get out, and he has to get out, he has to be part of the world. And so for the first 2 weeks, everything went well, and then in the second 2 weeks, after we disclosed and we got the diagnosis, and I ran right in and said, hey, is this going to be a problem? Our child now has an autism diagnosis. No, it's not going to be a problem, not a problem at all. But within a month, it was a huge problem to the point where they told us that our child was no longer welcome at the YMCA for childcare, for classes, for anything, and they were saying, we're just not equipped to deal. Now, I would also tell you that my child had engaged in challenging behavior and at one point had thrown a toy at another child. So it was not, just that they just decided they couldn't deal with it all. But I will also tell you that my child threw a toy at somebody directly after they had thrown a toy at him, a neurotypical child who threw a toy at him. That child was not told that they were no longer welcome at the facility. I had a toy thrown at me that hit me in the eye that was thrown by one of the director's children. And that child was not told that they could not come. So, I'm just saying. And I know you're probably thinking like I am now that if the people are throwing toys everywhere, I probably wouldn't want my child there anyway. Yes. But in any case, I was so and continue to be so affronted by the idea that based on my child's diagnosis or his behavior, that anybody would say he's not welcome here. Makes me mad. Now, I know that they have since changed their policies. I have not gotten an apology in writing. But, life goes on. And my child went on to do other things that were actually better for him, so the world all was okay. But I remember the phone conversation when I was talking to the director of the local YMCA saying, really? This is your policy? Because if my child came in a wheelchair, you would be kicking him out too? And they said, yeah, we're not set up for that. And I said, well, then maybe you need to figure out how you need to get yourself set up to deal with real children in the real world. My understanding is that they have now. But, like I said, we have not been invited back. And since I was told that my child was not welcome there, then, where my child is not welcome, I am not welcome. I still get upset about it. Look at me, I'm upset. So let me know where this holiday center is. And we'd be happy to, get them on record saying that they don't have room for children on the autism spectrum. If that's the kind of publicity they want. Oh, it just makes me mad. I get all emotional about it. In any case, I wanted to check one of the other sites for the question of, I've already gotten so sidetracked, but the question of the day was, what is your plan to help your child maintain progress and potentially grow over the summer? And just checking on one of the other sites where I don't think we've actually posted it today. Looking. Oh, and I always do this because sometimes it's in the other column. Okay. So no responses on that one. That's okay. It's Friday. I know you guys are busy. In any case, we have to take a short break. We're going to come back and do the myth of the day. And then at 11 o'clock, we're going to be joined by the wonderful and fabulous Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. We're talking about research today, so stick with us.
I am grateful for Autism Speaks because they allow families like me to have hope.
They're working towards having these children live better lives.
There's a space for you. Yeah, there's a world for you, and there's a community that is behind you.
And one that has really been able to be the singular voice for people who are involved with and who care about autism.
I do have autism, but I don't let that become a disability for me. Autism Speaks is going to continue to help those who need it, and just look at all the stuff they've done so far and you will be impressed.
3, 2, 1.
And you need to support the walks. We have to raise awareness, but we also have to raise funds to do the work.
I'm grateful for Autism Speaks for one main reason, is they are allowing me to focus on the research.
The work that Autism Speaks has been doing is critical for keeping autism research on the radar screen.
We proclaimed 2 April as the World Autism Awareness Day. I'm very proud of the UN and thankful Autism Speaks.
Getting the health mandate bill passed in New Jersey particularly, we needed to be able to make an argument, not just do this because it's the right thing to do, but do it because it's cost effective.
When everyone else told me nothing was wrong with my son, I got information from a website that told me something wasn't right.
I am so proud of Autism Speaks for creating these beautiful ad campaigns, which have reached people who are not affected by autism and have also created a greater climate of compassion and understanding.
It's been really great for Bachman to have gotten involved with Autism Speaks early on. I think everybody here feels like they really make a difference.
To make sure that we generate as much money as we can for Autism Speaks so we can all solve this puzzle together.
There's no way we could have come this far without our families, without our supporters to date, but there's so much farther we have to go. And everybody's invited to join this cause. We need all the help we can get to make the difference we know we can make.
Welcome back to Autism Live. It's time for the myth of the day. I keep saying we need music. Myth of the day. Today, our myth that is something that we all participate in sometimes is the idea that there's no help and there's no support and our choices are minimal. I know that it feels that way, and there are even days when I get into that mindset even now. And I want you to know that I know that you feel that way some of the time. And I always think that it's important to own our feelings and to not, totally dismiss them. Because at 2 o'clock in the morning, a lot of the times you are alone. You're alone with the fact that you're a parent of a child and you don't have all the things that you need. And that's a real thing in that moment. But what I do want you to know, and what I want you to start to begin to think about, is that there is help. There really are people who are there who are figuring it out and have figured out some things and who want to help you figure it out with your individual child. And I can tell you, having been on this journey, and by the way, don't I know how grateful am I that I got access to arguably the best ABA therapy that there is on the planet, because my child was treated here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California, right from where we're broadcasting from. Our studio is right here in their building. And I, huge fan of them, very grateful, and the state of California paid for it. It was still hard. It was still financially devastating because I couldn't be at work. I needed to be home, and it was still hard, and I still felt like we were terribly, terribly alone. So I can't even imagine, for those of you who don't have access to the best ABA therapy in the world and don't have access to the funding that I had funding to. But I can tell you that I've been able to meet parents around the world who didn't have what I had and still found a way to make it work. And I can tell you that now that I am working in this building on a daily basis, that I've gotten to see things sort of behind the curtain, to see who's at work behind the scenes to be able to help you. And I have said this before and I'll say it again, it's absolutely humbling, you guys, when I get to see who is working on this and how hard they're working and how much passion and energy and they're pouring their lives into it. I didn't choose this path. I don't know about you, but if I had been given a choice, I can guarantee you I would have taken the chicken's way out and said, no, I don't think this is for me. I don't think I'm up to it, is what I would have said. I didn't get that choice. I had this beautiful baby boy who descended into autism, and there was no way that I was going to leave him on this journey by himself, right? That kind of mother I am not, and I haven't met that mother yet. But I wasn't leaving this child. And fortunately, my husband wasn't leaving us either, and we could do this together. And yet, I had no idea how many people on a daily basis were there for us. I had no idea how many options. Evelyn was just talking about the fact that, sometimes in life we get tunnel vision and we only see what we see. And I think sometimes we only see what we're treated to. So I was in this very small condo with this child who was not listening to me, and I certainly had tunnel vision and thought, I am in this by myself. Even to some extent, not with my husband, because the kind of deal that we made was that I was going to focus on the autism and he was going to focus on keeping a roof over our heads, and we were, would meet in the middle when we could. We knew that it was important for him to learn the ABA techniques too, but part of my job was to get it all set up so that he could show up and learn as much as he could in the time that he had. So that's the way in which we did it, but it was me really doing the research and finding out what we needed to do and where we needed to be, and man, did I feel alone sometimes. But you're not alone. If you're feeling like you're alone and there's nobody in this with you, I got to tell you, I know that to be not true, because I'm pulling for you. And I know that I'm not the only one. I know that I'm not the only one. You would not believe how often that there are, even in this building, let alone around the world, that I will sit in a meeting and there will be people saying, what are we doing for these families? And how can we do it better? And how can we get the message out to them? How can we help them? What do they need? And it's part of the reason I say to you guys, please let me know, because people ask me what you need and I don't want to presume to know. So tell us what you need. Tell us what your biggest struggles are. I can speak from my experience, but it's changed a lot. Let's be honest. It has changed a lot. And there are more resources for you now. There are more funding sources now than there ever before, even in this economy. That is the truth. But tell us what you need, because there are people that are working on it. There are people who are standing by who want to help you. And by the way, that's not just here. I truly am humbled when I think about the scientists and the way in which that we're working. I know that they're not covering that in the media, and I wish that they were, but they're not. But that's part of the reason why I'm here to tell you, you are not alone. I'm here with you, and I have access to people who have knowledge and skills and access. So please use that and even abuse it. Would you please? Because you're not bothering me. I wish you would bother me. You're never going to bother me. Let me know what you need. Don't be in this alone, please. That's no way to feel that's productive. I know you're going to feel it sometimes. There are still times when I think, oh, nobody understands. Because in that moment, it feels that way. But I know that you guys get it. And I want you to know that I get it, at least in part. Our kids are all different. Their journeys are different. Their paths are different. But we all need to be together on this and use the resources that are available to us and ask the questions that lead us to those resources. So don't be alone. Please don't be alone. I want to remind you that you can always email us here. No matter what time of day or night, you can email. We'll cover your questions, your suggestions as soon as we possibly can. And we will send you typewritten responses. I'll help to connect you with people who have the answers and have the information that you're searching for. Don't Don't be a victim in all of this. You know, we just came back from, and by the way, Emily, can you flash the email address for them? We just came back from a couple of weeks ago being at the ABAI. There's our email address, write to us. We were at the ABA International Conference, and we interviewed so many experts. It really was amazing, you guys, to see how many people are working on this day and night. And one of the first people that we talked to was Dr. Travis Thompson. And I was talking to him, and he's written 4 really well-known books about autism, an amazing gentleman, a wealth of knowledge. And one of the things after the cameras stopped that I had the opportunity to talk to him about is the fact that not only is he an expert in autism, but he is the grandfather of a child with autism. And so we talked a little bit about that, and I said, what was that like when you, realized that your grandson had autism? And he talked about the moment in which he said to his daughter, I think you need to get him looked at. And I said, was that a difficult moment? And he looked at me and he said, why? Why would that be a difficult moment? And I said, because, you were treading on some thin ice and saying something to your daughter that she probably didn't want to hear. And wasn't there some trepidation? He said, oh, good heavens, no. Why would there be trepidation? I know, because I'm an expert, I knew that he had autism, and I knew that the sooner I told her, the sooner she was going to be able to get him help. And he said, too much of what's out there right now tends to lend itself to this victim mentality for the parents, and that we don't have to be victims. We don't have to be victims. There is help for our children. We aren't alone. There is hope for our children. We just need to move in the direction to give our children access to it. So wherever you are today, whatever it is that you're going through, and you've got your emotions, heaven knows, and I understand and can relate, in my own way. I hope that you, as quickly as possible, move forward on the idea that there is help and that you just have to reach out your hand. You just have to ask. Go to your local support group, go to your global support group, and come here. Tell us what you need. Tell us, I don't know what I need, if that's what you don't know, and don't be ashamed of that, because that was me on day one. I couldn't have told you what I needed, but I needed to know where to go. So I'm glad you found us. We're here for you, and we'll help you to get access to the questions that you need, and we'll help you to point you in the direction of funding that you can get access to. Don't be alone in this. All right? That's our myth for the day. We are going to take a short break, and then it's Friday. So on Friday, we like to end the week with a special treat. We have Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, who's going to be with us talking about research. You're not going to want to miss it. Stick with us.
I'm Adele Nadowski, Director and Co-Creator of Skills. CARD e-learning is an online tool that has been developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD e-learning is the training that is delivered to the ABA therapists at CARD to train them on the principles of applied behavior analysis and to equip them with the knowledge they need to essentially deliver the ABA-based techniques during their therapy with the children that they work with. ABA has been proven scientifically to be the most effective intervention for children with autism. At this point, even the Surgeon General has come out with a statement suggesting just that. So we know that this is something that children with autism definitely need if they're going to improve and live the lives that we're hoping that they're going to be able to live. By being able to train people on this one particular method that we know works, and to be able to have all of your staff within your school settings on the same page, it allows you to take more of a multidisciplinary approach, and there's definite consistency going on within the team. It makes sure that every person involved with that child's treatment program, including the speech and language pathologist, the occupational therapist, the teachers, the aides, all of these individuals to be able to be trained so that they can all work together effectively with the child. Parents that are using CARD e-learning can use it either to train themselves, and then after having done that, they can implement different techniques with their child in order to teach new skills. But oftentimes parents might also be working either with an ABA provider, with a school, or they may have even hired their own therapist to deliver the intervention techniques. So CARD e-learning can be used either to collaborate with your school. It can also be used to train the therapists that are coming to the home of the parents, or it can also be shared with the ABA provider so that that provider can find out about it and perhaps implement it within their organization and train their staff. You can also do reporting for your organization. So you can actually look and find out which teachers are progressing, what their quiz scores are, and actually we can give you reports as well that will help you to compare the different teachers and their performances. CARD e-learning is really, really simple to use. You can log on to this as long as you have a computer, that's all you need, and an internet connection. And you can work on it any time of the day, anywhere that you're at. When you log on, you realize that right away. First of all, on the top of the page, there's a navigational tutorial. It's a how to use this page button. Simply by watching that video, it'll all kind of unfold in front of you, and it becomes extremely self-explanatory. CARD e-learning has 9 modules, and you can basically go through those at your own pace. You're going to be watching videos that are kind of like a storyboard with narration, but in addition to that, there's many different video clips of therapists actually implementing the techniques that are being described within the storyboard that you can also watch. And then of course you're able to pause, you're able to type notes right directly underneath the video that you're watching. You can save your notes, you can review them, and between each module you do take a quiz, and once you pass that quiz you can go on to the next module. And then after you complete all of them, you have a final exam. And by completing the final exam and passing with a score of 85% or better, you will be given a certificate of completion. Let me show you how easy it is to use CARD e-learning.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. And our special guest, because it's Friday, don't you love Friday? Our special guest is Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. Thank you for joining us.
Great to be here.
And you are the director, the head of Research and Development
yep, here at CARD, and executive director of the Autism Research Group, our new nonprofit. Also.
Awesome. Absolutely awesome. So we ask you to come in from time to time to look at things for us and tell us. I know I read things and media presents things in a certain way about research on the news, on the nightly news, and I look at it and I go, wow, that sounds fascinating, but I don't know what all the underneath stuff is. And a lot of times it isn't at all what it looked like on the evening news.
That's right.
And so I sent you a study, something that I saw this week that I was like, okay, this is interesting to me, but I want to know what the nuts and the bolts and how to make sense of it. Talking about mice and bone marrow transplants, mice who have some level of OCD.
Mm-hmm.
And my understanding, my rudimentary understanding of it, and tell me if I'm getting this wrong, that they had mice who were obsessively grooming themselves.
That's correct.
And they took the bone marrow from those mice and replaced it with the bone marrow from mice who didn't excessively groom themselves, and that overwhelmingly the mice who had this sort of OCD issue, that how they were claiming that it was, lost this behavior.
That's correct, yeah.
And then the other part that was really interesting to me was that then they took completely typical mice who didn't have this issue, took their bone marrow and put bone marrow of the mice who did have the grooming issue into those mice, and those mice now overwhelmingly started excessively grooming themselves.
That's correct.
So they were saying cause and effect.
Right, yeah, and that's always sort of a dangerous term to throw around, as cause and effect or causal relation. But it is very interesting that they had a particular medical intervention that they did that resulted in increases or decreases in very particular behaviors, stereotyped behaviors. exactly along the lines that they predicted. So you put in this bone marrow from the disordered mice into typical mice, quote unquote, and they start doing this obsessive behavior. Whereas if you put bone marrow from typical mice into the mice with this disorder, that actually decreased the obsessive behavior a lot. So it is really compelling to see a very clear behavioral effect of a medical intervention. So it is kind of interesting. However, it's important, especially with any research that uses animal models of a human disorder, it's very important to be cautious about how you interpret the findings.
Yeah, and I think, you know, what was interesting about it to me is that, you know, I was telling somebody else about this, and they were saying, you know, but are they saying that this has some relationship to autism? And I said, well, you know, I think I found it on an autism site, which is a little scary to me because mice excessively grooming themselves, how much does that actually have to do with autism? How big of a leap are we making here?
Well, there's a lot of leaps. So first of all, let's get back to sort of the basic rationale behind animal models of any disorder.
Okay.
The hope is when you create an animal model of a disorder, the hope is the actual cause and effect or functional relations in the real disorder are replicated in the mouse model of the disorder. Okay, so for example, we have mice that obsessively groom themselves, and that looks a lot like OCD behaviors or trichotillomania, which is just a fancy word for pulling out your own hair.
Right.
And so it looks at sort of at the level of topography, or at first blush, it looks similar, right? The two organisms are doing the same behavior. So you might think, well, that's a great model. But what's much more important than simply displaying the same behavior is why the organism is displaying the behavior.
Right.
So let me give an example that I think we could all be familiar with. Let's say we wanted to create a mouse model of tantrums. Let's say we want to understand how tantrums work in people with autism. So we create a mouse, a genetic variation of a mouse that throws lots of tantrums. Would that be a reasonable model of tantrums in people with autism? And the answer to that would be, well, only if the tantrums occur for the same reasons that tantrums occur in children with autism. So we know a lot about why tantrums occur in children with autism, right? Sometimes it's to get attention, sometimes it's to escape from doing non-preferred tasks or work, sometimes it's to get access to something that they want, some kind of item or activity, sometimes it's to get access to the opportunity to be in control or be the boss of the situation. So we know that there's lots of different reasons why tantrums, why they occur in children with autism. So let's say we made a mouse model of tantrums, but it was only due to one of those reasons. And then we developed a treatment to cure that in that mouse. And then we say, oh, well, look, it worked. Well, is that going to work now with my 3-year-old son with tantrums? Well, only if it's happening for the same reason, you know. So, and what we know from functions of behavior is you can actually make a behavior worse if you're not directly addressing the function. So it's very, you have to be very skeptical and very careful when doing animal models of any disorder. One thing to keep in mind too is a major component of obsessive compulsive disorder is the obsessing part. It's not just the outward compulsive behaviors, the repetitive behaviors, but it's also the thinking repetitively and obsessively about particular topics. So there's lots of thinking, there's lots of worrying, anxiety going on that may or may not be there in mice. As far as we know, mice don't sit around thinking about the future and worrying about the future. So if that thinking and worrying component is actually an important part of OCD, then that entire aspect of that disorder is not being represented at all in the mouse model. So that might even be the most important component. We don't know, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we need to be very careful when constructing animal models of anything, especially if it's a disorder that involves complex human behavior, such as thinking and worrying.
Right. So nobody sat down and asked the mice, are you worried about something and that's why you're pulling your hair? And after they stopped doing it, nobody said, and what's your anxiety level right now?
Right. And that research, by definition, can't be done because we can't ask mice if they're worrying. So.
Right. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Isn't that a bummer?
But I do have to say, it's an exciting study, and it does implicate the immune system and immunological dysregulation or whatever you want to call it in OCD and potentially in autism. And so this is one of those things where a responsible researcher says, okay, this is the first step first step out of 1,000 steps that need to be taken before we can actually help somebody. And I think that is actually what these researchers are saying. They're not saying we've cured OCD.
No.
They said that we might have found one particular component in the overall complexity of the disorder that might have a causal relationship.
Right.
So a lot more research needs to be done before we know.
And I think that's really indicative of how research gets rolled out to us as consumers, is that, you know, there'll be some little thing that suggests that more studies need to be done, and yet the media blows it up and we all feel like, well, you know, and why aren't we seeing that pill on the shelf already?
That's right.
If they found it.
And, you know, as ABA folks, we got to keep in mind what everybody's source of reinforcement is and what everybody's source of motivation is. And for the media, maybe this sounds jaded, but their source of motivation is to get the most attention to their articles, right?
Absolutely.
That's how the paper or the internet or the website or whatever, that's how they survive, is through advertising revenue. And the only way you get advertising revenue is through attention.
Right.
So they can't, if a media outlet wants to survive, they can't report science accurately because it would be too boring.
Right. They got to sensationalize at least in headlines, if not within the story. So we all need to be mindful of that and not, you know, make mental leaps and think about getting our kids bone marrow transplants. It's so far away from that it's ridiculous.
You know, and yeah, honestly, and that's one of these things where we've seen this time and again over the last 30 years in autism, is one teeny nugget of knowledge comes out of one obscure study showing there might be a link between X, Y, Z and autism, and then suddenly you see hundreds or maybe thousands of families asking for treatment on the basis of that one study that wasn't even a treatment study to begin with. And then once a few people have done it and they believe or they feel like it worked, then they report that on the internet and blogs and everything else, and pretty soon you have a whole country of families asking for a treatment that's never been researched, and we don't even know if it's safe.
Right.
So I would like to say to your viewers very clearly, do not go and ask for bone marrow transplants for your child with autism. This study does in no way justify doing that at this point.
Okay, absolutely important for us to know. We're going to take a break, but when we come back, I've asked for Dr. Tarbox to speak to us a little bit about bullying. There's a big, huge story that's been all over the news the last couple of days that doesn't involve autism, but you know, it involves bullying, and we know that that's a huge part of our kids' experience of the world, unfortunately. And so we're going to talk a little bit about bullying when we come back. Stick with us.
Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, and this is my son Jem. We're here today at the Home Depot. You might know that Home Depot is famous for giving free classes to adults on lots of things like tiling and other home crafts. Well, they also have free classes for kids as well. It's called the Kids Workshop. We love doing that, don't we, Jem?
Yeah.
It's cool. So come on inside with us and let's do a craft.
Yay.
The Kids Workshop is a program that's been around with Home Depot almost since we've been a company, and it's been developed to allow kids in the community to come in and give them an opportunity to build something, to be able to create something and be able to take just simple wood pieces and put them together with nails and hammers and screwdrivers and then paint them.
So you do this every first Saturday of the month.
Any Home Depot that you go to on the first Saturday of every month between 9 and 12, you can join different associates throughout different stores and build these projects with these kids.
And do they have to do anything beforehand, or can they just show up on that Saturday?
All they need to do is show up. We have all the tools, all the materials that the kids will need. We have aprons that we give to the kids that they can take home and maintain their pins. They get pins on a regular basis for completing projects. With that, they can keep track of how many projects they've done. And
it's all free.
It's all absolutely free, all provided.
Which is wonderful. And Wilson, I have to say, you know, you guys devised this for all kids to be able to do this.
Correct.
What I particularly love about it as an autism mom, it gives my child a place to come and learn a new skill, to socialize with kids of all kinds.
Absolutely. And that's what we're here for. Home Depot is definitely loves to be involved with the community and bring the community in to work with us. That's what we love to do.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're here right now with Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, who is the head of research and development at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And I promised that we were going to have you talk a little bit about bullying. We've had a big story in the news this week that doesn't directly involve autism at all, but it involves bullying. I'm sure that you guys know what I'm talking about. The elderly woman who was working as a bus monitor on the bus, and the three younger teenage, like around age 13 boys who decided that they would bully her, and they videotaped it and posted it on the internet. And there's just been a tremendous outpouring for the woman, over $500,000 raised online to help her to retire early. And of course, some of the backlash for it, the families of the children who did the bullying are getting death threats and things like that. But it brings to mind how much bullying there is, how nobody is safe from it, and how this is a real situation. I sort of feel like this outpouring that has come has been because people are just fed up with the idea that kids could think that this was appropriate in any context. Those children have apologized, it's my understanding now, and are feeling very bad about it. But interesting, the mindset of the kids who did it, the mindset, the woman basically didn't respond. She didn't report them. She didn't do anything about it, and has said that she didn't want for anybody to get hurt. That was her sort of motivation. But you see on the videotape that she basically just sits there and takes it, and they say hateful things to her. But we know that for our kids on the spectrum, that bullying is an issue, and I'd love for you as an ABA person and as a researcher to talk to us a little bit about bullying and, you know, your thoughts on keeping our kids safe and what we need to do.
Sure. Well, it's a pretty big topic, and I should say it's not necessarily my area of expertise, so I'm speaking a little bit beyond my scope of practice here. But yeah, bullying is a major problem for all individuals, not necessarily just children on the spectrum. But I'm pretty sure that folks on the spectrum are at a greater risk for being the targets of bullying, simply because they're different. You know, and that's a common thing for bullies to do, is just pick out anything that's different about someone and use that as a target. Some programs that I've heard of that can be pretty effective target, interestingly, the source of reinforcement for the bully, and make sure and train others, train everybody in a school how to not give reinforcement to the bully. And so it turns out one of the best things that folks can do on the playground is when one child starts to be a bully, rather than laughing, which is the usual response from the audience, right? And that's why he continues to do it, just turn your head and walk away. And what they found is if kids consistently do this, it actually can decrease bullying, across school.
So all of the kids turn and walk away, the child who's being bullied and everybody else.
Right, and basically the idea is you can do that if you want, but it's not going to produce the reaction that you want. It's not going to get you attention from your peers.
That is fascinating, because from an ABA standpoint, I can see where, if it's attention driven, then that would absolutely work, and yet it's very opposite to what they're telling a lot of kids to do.
Is it?
Yeah, because we're seeing there's a lot of people who are saying, no, everybody stands up and says, that's bullying and we're not going to take it, and actually feeds the attention.
Interesting.
So that is interesting, and I that's fascinating to me, and it's kind of exciting to me what you've said, because I could see where it would be very attention driven. And even on this videotape that you see of these kids talking to this woman, you could see that it was just like this fire that and got more and more oxygen, and it was like they were topping each other to see who could say the worst thing.
Right.
Which seems to me very attention driven.
Yeah, and frankly, it's just amazing how uncivilized human children can be when there isn't enough authority around.
Absolutely.
It's sort of a sad commentary on how human beings have sort of a mean streak, right? It's sort of an innate capability to be not very nice to one another.
Absolutely.
If there's no negative consequences in place. So.
Absolutely. Well, a very interesting thing for us to think about. I want to ponder that. But in terms of, on the other side, are there things that we can be doing to help our children to learn how to handle when somebody is bullying them, or to avoid being bullied?
Sure, yeah. The number one thing is probably to, again, not give attention and simply walk away. And it doesn't necessarily mean go tattletale on the bully, because that could have bad social consequences for the kid. But basically to just not let yourself be present for that, and walk away, go sit next to the playground minder or whatever, and move yourself to a location where you're less likely to be a target. But it is pretty tough. I mean, it's very difficult. And the other side of that coin is some folks on the spectrum can unwittingly actually become bullies themselves without necessarily even knowing or meaning to. Sometimes due to a lack of perspective taking. They do a particular behavior and it results in the consequence they want, maybe approval from their peers or attention, and they might not actually see things from the victim's perspective. And so I have actually worked with some kids who, some higher functioning Asperger's kids who basically became bullies themselves, unintentionally, but it just kind of worked out that way.
And so what kinds of things do you do in those circumstances to fix it?
Basically, good old-fashioned ABA, give the kid a very clear rule about what kind of behaviors are acceptable and what kind aren't. If you can do some perspective-taking training, that's a great way to go. In terms of trying to help the bully learn how to be able to identify what it's like to be the victim and vice versa. That can help. But then, really, again, meaningful consequences. Teach the child to monitor their own behavior, and then they have to have meaningful consequences. If there aren't meaningful differences in the consequences for a bully, either bullying or not bullying, then they're going to do the behavior that results in the most reinforcement. So if they're getting attention from their peers, they're going to continue to do it, even if you ask them not to.
Right. I would imagine too that with some kids on the spectrum, that they would say things from a lack of perspective, even if it isn't attention driven, and not have say to somebody, you're fat, and to them it's just, everybody can see that, I can see that, so there's no problem in saying it, and not realizing how hurtful that would be.
That's absolutely right. And again, that goes back to lack of perspective taking. They kind of don't get the social consequences for your choice of words. It comes back to telling white lies. If you see someone on the playground and you think they look ridiculous or you hate their hair, that's not a time to say that. That's a time to either not interact with the person or say something polite and move on.
Right.
And so that's a skill that we've trained specifically here, and it can be trained. But
absolutely. And then in terms of, so if the child, I want to go back to if the child's being bullied and they walk away and they don't necessarily engage with the person, but they walk away and they've got emotions about it. Any research that you're aware of about, or any ideas that you've had, or kids that you've worked with before about dealing with the self-esteem issues that come from being bullied?
I'm not as familiar with that, so I don't think I could really answer that question very intelligently.
Sometimes I expect you guys to know absolutely everything, and yet I know you can't, but it doesn't stop me from asking.
Sure.
All right, because that's the kind of thing that we've been dealing with, is that, my son's had a little bit of bullying this year, and I just really see that his self-esteem took a hit.
We do actually have some lessons in the skills curriculum on self-esteem, and basically it involves talking through and thinking through your own value and the value of others, and how people assign value and how people judge whether you're bad or good, and what does that mean to be bad or good. A lot of it really is a more sort of higher level thinking behavior, essentially. But yeah, there are things you can do for it.
We've been working on the positive self-statements.
Right.
And, so that he's been working on that. So very interesting. I want to take another break, and when we come back, I've got some other stuff that I want to talk to you about, but we'll leave it a mystery, so stick with us.
ACT Today, or Autism Care and Treatment Today, was founded in 2004 by several passionate parents who believe that access to early, effective treatment is vital for individuals with autism. Together with Dr. Doreen Graham-Pache, the world's leading provider of therapy for autism, this group created ACT Today to do just as the name implies, take action immediately to treat autism spectrum disorders.
A lot of families and parents and even physicians don't yet accept the fact that we are recovering children with autism.
In 2006, inspired by her struggle to get treatment for her young son Wyatt, television producer and author Nancy Alspaugh Jackson and her husband Reed hosted a backyard benefit for the foundation called Denim and Diamonds for Autism. Tens of thousands of dollars were raised, and in 2008, Alspaugh Jackson took the helm of ACT Today as executive director.
This country has to come together to save a generation of children.
With a dedicated board of directors, a small but committed staff called the A-Team, as in autism, ACT Today is making a huge difference in the lives of children across the country. Grants that fund programs for behavior therapy, special needs schools, and summer camps. Medical needs like diagnostic tests and special diets. Basic safety equipment such as helmets for children who repetitively bang their heads, and fencing for those who wander. Assisted technologies and assistance dogs.
Hi, my name is Max, and I love my iPad too. It's so great. I can take photos,
In 2010, Act for Military Families became the first national campaign to benefit military children with autism.
I'm Joe Montaigne. As a father of a daughter with autism, I know the challenges that brings.
Act Today continues to educate and raise national awareness on the need for early and intensive intervention for an epidemic that affects at least 1 in 110 children.
I called on November 1st and I'm like, how am I going to get notified? How are you going to let me know? And they ended up looking and they informed me that he had received the grant, which was like a blessing from above.
Act Today, fulfilling its mission of helping families with autism, one child at a time.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Our special guest right now is Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, and we've been talking about research topics, and our topic in general this week was maintaining progress.
Okay.
So I wanted to get you to weigh in terms of research and how important it is, because a lot of us have less services. It's the summer for a lot of us, and that can mean a reduction in hours. So what do we need to do to maintain progress? What do we know from research?
Great question. Well, the simplest way to think about it is everything we're doing in ABA intervention for kids with autism is trying to teach new skills that will maintain and will help the child actually access reinforcement in their daily lives. That's sort of the overall goal of ABA, right? So in doing so, a good analogy is you or I learning a foreign language. So let's say you or I start studying, I don't know, Italian or something, right? And we make some progress. What would be the best way for us to lose those skills?
To stop doing it.
Just not practice it, right? Exactly.
Right.
So if you don't have anyone to speak Italian to, you're going to lose that eventually, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not. Maybe if it's your very first language, you're not going to lose it, you know. But if it's a second language and it's something that's still sort of in the acquisition process, you're going to lose it if you don't use it. So everything we teach these kids is the same. So our kids, you know, have particularly difficult time learning, and so we need to make sure that they get just as much practice for maintenance as you or I would need if we were learning a foreign language.
Okay, awesome.
So, and what's the best way to maintain a foreign language?
To go to the country and be forced to do it constantly.
Right. So there is a real clear demonstration. If you want someone to be good at something and to maintain those skills and generalize those skills, they need constant practice throughout their daily lives. So. What that translates into is if you know you're going on a month-long vacation, or let's say your services are being cut for a month, or whatever the case is, but you're going to have a break in services, your job beforehand, so a couple weeks at least beforehand, is to start thinking about, okay, what are all the skills that my child learned in the last month or two, let's say, and how can I arrange my child's everyday life so that those skills have an opportunity to be practiced.
Awesome.
Okay, and as long as you do that, and do it a lot, that's all you need to do.
That's just to maintain.
To maintain, right.
Okay.
To maintain the gains that you made.
Right, and I think it's important to maintain, but I'm also making the case for, since, you know, we've got this time in the summer, why not push for more progress?
Well, you can definitely give it a shot. And, you know, to be fair, some families don't have the time and the resources or the training to really be able to push their child's intervention program forward, at least in comparison to having professionally delivered therapy. But it's absolutely worth a shot.
Absolutely.
So what you want to do there is ask your child's ABA supervisor what the plan is. Say, okay, what has my child been learning over the last couple months? What should he continue to be learning over the next month or two? And you need to have a plan. It needs to all be written out. You need to know the exact examples of every single skill, so exact items or targets. So if it's colors that you're practicing, you need to know exactly which colors your child learned in the last couple months and which new colors you should be practicing, and, you know, et cetera. If it's letters, you know, uppercase, lowercase, whatever. But then the important thing, here's the one like guaranteed way to help with generalization into everyday life is don't do the same thing over and over.
Right.
Don't do the same thing over and over.
Yeah.
So what that means is if you are working on colors, let's say you have a green lamp in your house, right? And your kid just learned green. Well, every time you pass by that lamp, that's an opportunity to say, hey, what color is that? Or, hey, show me something green, or where's the green lamp, right? But if you only do that with that particular lamp, then as far as your kid knows, you could be practicing lamp, not green, right? Or you could be practicing living room, not green, right? So you need to make sure there are lots and lots of different opportunities to practice the same skill over and over. So you might have to identify 100 or 200 or 300 different stimuli in your life, in your everyday life, that are opportunities for practicing stuff.
Okay, so let me see if I got this straight though. We want to be having lots of opportunities, not just not doing it the exact same way over and over and over again, but we do want consequences to be the same over and over and over again.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Okay.
So you want lots of immediate feedback, right? So if your kid makes a correct response, you want immediate feedback. All right, you're so smart. Whatever kind of reinforcement works for him or her. If she has a tough time and makes an error or doesn't respond, then you throw in some kind of prompting as a correction procedure. Whatever, ask your ABA supervisor what you would normally do. But yeah, clear consequences. Lots of practice of the skill, but not practice of the same example of the skill over and over and over.
Right. I always talk about with generalization that my mom unwittingly understood generalization when she taught me how to drive a car, because she had me learn it on her car, but she was constantly changing things up, and then I had to do it on my dad's car, and I had to do it on the neighbor's car and somebody else's car.
Example.
And she would never do it, like we started out in a parking lot, but then we would go to a different parking lot, so that the lampposts were in different places and that I would have to learn. And then we started out on a deserted road in the back, but we never did the same roads because she was trying to teach me how to drive on any road.
She totally got generalization training.
Yeah, my brilliant mother who had no idea.
That's great. That's fantastic.
So, yes, so now I can drive. I can pretty much get into any car, drive on any road, knock on wood, fairly safely.
And here's another tip for parents. If you're on vacation or even just getting a break from services, whatever it is, you've been stressed out, you've been working hard. Probably what you want to do the most is rest and give your kid a rest and just relax. And no one can blame you for feeling that. That's the only reasonable perspective to have as a human being. But in addition to that, if you do want to maintain the skills, you got to put more time and effort into it than you would like to. So figure out how much you really feel like doing it, and then maybe double it.
Yeah.
And that's how much you should do it.
Yeah.
And again, it's not right or wrong. That just is the best way to maintain skills and to help them generalize.
But almost everything is an opportunity.
Everything's an opportunity. Here's another great tip. Anytime your kid wants something, that's an opportunity. Anytime your kid wants something, it's an opportunity, because what that tells you, when your kid wants something, and when your kid wants something, right? Whether he's reaching, crying, pointing, whatever, gesturing, or maybe asking for it, but with just one word, that's an opportunity to practice expansion of that skill just a little bit.
Okay.
So if your kid is reaching for the teddy bear that's on a shelf that he can't reach, and your kid can say, "buh," for bear, right? So that's the first approximation. That's great. But now prompt your kid to say bear or bear, okay? And then once that happens once, reinforce it. And then from then on, you need to expect the better response. And what you did was you just taught your child a little piece of language.
Right.
And if you arrange the environment so that there's lots of opportunities for your child to want something that they can't get on their own, then you've just arranged a whole bunch of teaching opportunities.
Yeah.
So this is how you set up the environment for what's called incidental teaching or pivotal response training. You basically bait the environment with lots and lots of stuff your kid wants, okay, but that he can't get on his own. So it could be a toy where the batteries are missing. It could be an item that's out of reach on the shelf. Could be a set of toys with one piece missing, right? Where the piece is needed. Could be if he's making a sandwich. It could be that you put out all the ingredients but leave out his favorite ingredient that he's going to want, he's going to ask for it. That's an opportunity to practice that word. Or if he already speaks really, really well and you don't need to expand language, you could practice, saying please or being more polite with it or using a full sentence or giving eye contact while they say it. So unfortunately, good is never good enough. There's always an opportunity to practice.
Pushing the envelope.
Push the envelope.
A little bit at a time.
Yep.
Really incredible. Well, fabulous. We've got a lot of things to work on over the summer now. And I think, as much as we always talk about the fact that, the best possible case scenario is that you have a really quality ABA provider in your home, that you've got a fully funded program. Next best is that you've got somebody who's supervising, and whether they come to you for a period of time, is able to work with you to design your program. But if you don't have access to those things, I personally want to recommend that you do skills. That's what we're doing over the summer, because we're done with our intensive ABA, and it's really, if you take the time to do CARDI learning, a parent can be very effective, and you get access to that curriculum and all lined out the different teaching points.
Right. It just gives you access to a lot of information that you don't need to then go figure out on your own.
Right.
So if there's a skill that you can think of that you want to teach your child, it's probably in there.
Yeah.
There's, almost 4,000 different things you can teach. teach in the curriculum. So if you want to teach it, it's probably there.
Yeah, and they have an amazing opportunity for you right now that if you buy 1 month, you get the rest of the summer for free. So a pretty amazing deal for you.
Nice.
But there are ways that we can be effective as parents, and I think that that's important to note. But I thank you so much for coming in here and talking about these different topics with us, and
it's always fun,
straightening us out and keeping us on the straight and narrow. And we will have Dr. Tarbox back with us next Friday. If you have questions for him, you can always write them in here, and we will get them to him and have him talk about them on the next Friday. But thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure.
Thank you. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we've got some interesting stuff to close out the show with, so stick with us.
When Maddie was diagnosed, I'll be honest, I was very ignorant on what autism was. I knew that autism was basically something that hit boys at the age of 2 to 3 and shut down. And sometimes you think of the typical Rain Man movie. And with Maddie, she was doing all the same signs and symptoms of a typical child with autism spectrum disorder.
Stand up.
She didn't even acknowledge us coming into the room. She had barely any eye contact. She didn't interact with her sisters. She didn't really do anything. She just basically lined up her toys, and that was about it. We have a team of 7 volunteers, or 8 now. We have 8 volunteers, including my husband and I. And I'm the team leader, and so I do all the curriculum and get everything ready each week.
Jana was downstairs until 11 o'clock at night working on curriculum, going through 2 different textbooks. And then we, as a group, meet on Monday nights, and we would go through what the curriculum was from Jana. And a lot of times we would go, well, how exactly do you do that? How do you sit her at the table and do this trial base? Well, what Skills has done for us, it's taken that away from Jana trying to figure out the curriculum for one. She can go down, or even our laptop, and she can sit down, and through all these questions, it comes up with the different programs.
At least for me, it was a relief off my shoulders. I was worried that I might be missing something, missing a curriculum that maybe she needs to know, where Skills, they have every possible thing your child needs to know from 0 to 7. They have a program for that.
What noise is this? Good job!
Every program that we did with her, I knew it was specific for what she needed to learn. Because before Skills, it was a lot of, okay, well, is that really age appropriate for a 2-year-old? You know, because it's not generalized. It's anywhere from 0 to 7. This is what your child needs to know in most manuals you'll find. But for this, okay, yep, she should be learning this. And no, she's not 4 yet. She doesn't need to know that yet.
We are so fortunate that Jana was able to attend a conference put on by CARD that opened the door for Skills, and that there's no looking back for us.
We started using the program in November. It seemed like by January something just clicked, and she has completely kind of came out of her fog that she was in for quite a while.
I have never read a documented case on any child that has not benefited anything from applied behavior analysis, and now with this new Skills and being, you know, like the E version of ABA, I can't imagine it doing anything harmful to their child. It's nothing but exponential growth for us.
To see her now, it just blows us away. I mean, we call her our little miracle child because in 7 months' time, she's just blossomed into this normal, functioning child, and suddenly, we joke about it all the time, like suddenly we have twins.
If you're even thinking about doing it, do it. Because the absolute worst thing you can do is do nothing at all. And even if you use this program and it's just a single mom or a single dad working in the evenings with their child, this program is going to benefit them. It's going to show you where they are, it's going to show you where they need to go, and it's going to show you what skills and how to get there. It is an online book on how to help recover your child.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We just said goodbye to Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, who we have on Fridays, and that's a wonderful thing. I want to remind you of a couple of different things. Right now, even as we speak, the Speed Gamers are raising money for autism. They have been in a week-long marathon that ends tonight, I think, at 5 p.m. Central Time, so only a few hours left. They are raising money. They are actually video gaming for, and there's the address. Please give them a look today and share it today on Facebook. They have been in a Pokemon marathon. There it is, the Speed Gamers, and today is the last day. You can see them there with a funky Pokemon hat on. They've been raising money for autism care and treatment today. This is the wonderful organization that Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson is the executive director of that gives money to families for the things that they request for autism care and treatment. You can visit their site, www.act-today.org, or you can go to the Speed Gamers. Either place, you can donate if you want as small of an amount as $1, or you could donate more. And when you watch for a little while, you see that there are 4 little screens there, and you can watch them playing the game and talking and doing different things, and you can watch the game to see what they're doing. And then there's a column down the side where they're chatting with people, and people write in and say things to them and say, hey, you know, I want you to go over and talk to this character or do this to this character in the video game. Excuse me. And these kids say to them, well, you know, will you donate $8 for that? Will you donate $10 for that? And people write back and say, yeah, I'll donate $8. And then when they do, they'll do it in the game. It's a really clever way to raise money for autism. They have, their goal this week was to raise over $50,000. They have already reached their goal. Excuse me. But, you know, we have kids that are in need. We have families that are in need. So every single penny that gets raised goes to good use. So take the time. If you have $1 to donate, if you have more to donate, please do. But in any case, we all participate in social marketing, social networking, those kinds of things. Give a Facebook plug to them so that people who have more money will go to the site as well. Because as I said, it's all for the best possible cause. That's thespeedgamers.com. And there you see it on the screen. So, and we have to say a big thank you to the Speed Gamers. They have been awesome. And you know, it gets me thinking about what more can we all do, you know? And you say to yourself, well, I have limited resources. I have, you know, I have no time, I have no money, I have no whatever, but here are these kids who play video games, and they've created an excuse for them to do the thing that they love the most while helping people who need the help. You just gotta love that, right? It really kind of kicks me in the rear end and says, all right, what am I doing? And why am I not doing more? And that we can think outside the box. So it's got me thinking about that. We know Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson, who co-hosts the hour Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy with me, that she always says, you know, if nothing else, do a lemonade stand with your children. And if you end up having $20 to send in, that $20 makes a huge difference for some family down the road. It really does. I know that it may seem like it's not enough, and I think a lot of times I am guilty of being in that kind of thinking, oh, well, if I can't do something that's big enough for who? You know, there were certainly times on this journey when $20 made a huge difference to me, and I know that there are those of you who are out there that it would make a huge difference to you. So if you have the ability to have a lemonade stand with your child, and by the way, the great opportunities to learn all kinds of things, and entrepreneurship, and conversation, and money, and all those things, socialization, customer service, all those things. We were just talking with Dr. Tarbox about how everything's an opportunity to teach, right? And I went the other day to a store to buy a typing game, a computer typing game, because I've mentioned that's one of the things that we're going to be working on this summer. And I went into a store, a big store, and there was a manager who was standing there talking to a young lady who was working at the register. And I walked by them initially, and they acknowledged us, and I was with my son. And I started to walk her further into the store, and I thought, I have no idea where I'm going. This is a huge store. So I turned around and I said to the people who were standing there, I said, can you tell me where the computer typing games would be? And the gentleman kind of pointed and did this and said, oh, it's over there behind that sign. And I said, oh, okay. And I started to move with my son towards that direction while I'm starting to fume, because I really appreciate good customer service and I really hate bad customer service, right? And I think that the reason why there's no good customer service is because people don't talk about it enough with their kids when they're growing up. I think that's part of it. So, and I think some people are just lazy too, in this economy when people don't have jobs. But in any case, I got over to where the man had pointed with his finger and got there, and there was no sales help there and nobody standing around, and I'm looking around completely lost. I find the area that I'm looking for and I'm not seeing a computer typing game anywhere. And now I'm getting angrier and angrier. And I finally find a salesperson to come over and help me, and he said, what is it you're looking for? And I said, well, I'm looking for a computer typing game. He says, I'm sorry, I don't think we carry those. And I said, well, why would you say that? Because I asked somebody at the front, they pointed over here, and he said, well, I haven't seen anything like that in a long time. I don't think we do. Let me look around. He looked around and he said, I don't see anything of that nature, which I found shocking in this store. But I said, all right, now I'm really fuming. And I walk back to the front of the store and I see this person, this manager, still chatting up the cashier. They're both still standing there chatting. And I have no idea what they were talking about. They could have been talking about, how you run a register. I don't know. But the body posture didn't necessarily suggest that, if you know what I mean. In any case, I interrupted them, and I literally had to interrupt them because they were so busy talking to each other. And I said to the gentleman, are you a manager? My son's standing there watching this whole thing, right? And he said, yes, I am. Is there a problem? And I said, yes, quite frankly, there is. I didn't really like the way this interchange between the two of us went. Excuse me? And I said, well, I came in here looking for a specific product, which clearly I want to buy. And I said, and your direction to me was over there. And I'm just curious if that is the way in which you train the people who work under you when a customer asks them. And he was like, right? And I said, because it really would have been nice if you'd walked me over and helped me find it. Or if you're busy enough here, if you had called and asked somebody to meet me over there. But in any case, apparently you don't have the product at all, so you sent me on a fool's errand. And he said, no, I'm sure that we have it. Did they look it up in the computer? And I said, no. And he's all upset about the fact that they didn't look it up in the computer. And I said, well, had you done the right thing, I would be willing to stand here and wait for you to look it up on the computer. But as it is, I'm going to go 3 stores down and I'm going to buy it from them. And now he's all embarrassed, right? And I've publicly humiliated him in front of the lady that he was chatting up, the other employee. And my son is taking note of all this, and we walked outside, and I said, so why was mommy upset? And we walked through all the different things, and it was really interesting to me because he's been around me enough, and I'm really like that about customer service. And I said, so what should he have done? And he said, well, he should have walked us over to the area. And I said, that's absolutely right. And there's no excuse for the fact. And he said, but he's a manager. And I said, all the more reason that he should have done the behavior that he wanted his employees to do. And so my son is taking note of that. And I said, so now we're going to go to the next store and let's see what happens there. Let's see if they do the right thing. And we went into the store, we found a helpful employee and said, can you tell us where, and I specifically used the word tell us, where the computer games would be for typing. And she said, oh, let me walk you over there. And my son went, she did it. She did it. She did it, Mom. And the girl is turning around saying, is there a problem? And I said, no. It's okay. It's just another conversation that we were having. And so she walked over, and then while she was there, she said, is there anything else that I can help you with? And now my son, and we hadn't talked about that aspect, he's like, oh, that's another good thing that she did. So he's starting to notice what it takes to do good customer service. Now, when it's his turn to run a business, or it's his turn to be an employee, how much better is he going to be on that first day than a child who hasn't been introduced to those things? So everything is an opportunity, right? Absolutely everything is an opportunity, and including having a lemonade stand. See how I brought that all back around? I didn't forget what I was talking about. Having a lemonade stand, you can start to put some of these customer service things. You be the first person to hire your child, right? Because eventually we're going to want to get them an internship and a job, and you be the first person to hire your child. Have the lemonade stand, make it a learning lesson, and then ultimately you can send the money to Act Today to help a family that's in need. It's a really fabulous thing. And make it reinforcing for your child. Make it really reinforcing for your child. My son ended up getting to pick, because he did such a good job, and he picked the SpongeBob typing game. I'm not seeing it, but he likes it, so there you have it. In any case, before I got sidetracked on this whole thing, I wanted to take a second to talk about social skills and about eye contact. That over the summer, this is something that we really can target in every single thing that we do, regardless of if you are at the beach, if you are at a restaurant, if you're visiting your brother-in-law, if you're just hanging around the house. This is one of those lessons that grows with a child. We never want to get to the point where we've totally said we no longer need to work on this anymore. We want to keep maintaining it if it's beautiful, beautiful eye contact, and strengthening it if it isn't there. And so I want to put that into your little toolkit for the summer to remind you that eye contact is an ideal thing to work on, whether the child is working on it with you, so you get up in the morning and you're doing something and making breakfast and rewarding them with eye contact. Remember that there are lots of ways to reward good eye contact, right? And lots of ways to get eye contact. That something that we can do is when a child is asking us something, and if we're not working on manding, if you're working on manding, reward the demand and give them the thing that they asked for, right? If your child already has manding under control and they're asking you for something, you can keep looking at them and say nothing and wait until they look at you, and then the second they look at you, give the thing that they are manding, right? That's a great way. Even if it's the child is requesting for your attention, if they're saying mom, 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 and you can be looking right at them, and eventually they will look at you, and the second they look at you, you say, yeah. And you don't have to say, did you see how I waited to give you the eye contact, until you gave me eye contact? You don't have to say any of that. We're just building that when you look at me, you get reinforced, right? So you can do it with that. There will be times when, with my son, even when he's playing video games, afternoon, when he's earned his video games, done all the things he needed to do, and he gets his time to play video games, we regularly interrupt him when he's playing video games and ask him a question. He has to be able to pause what he's doing and make eye contact before he can go back to playing his game. Because we always want to be strengthening that whole thing with eye contact. But you don't always have to talk about it, right? Although sometimes you will say, I need you to look at me, right? On those days when they're really struggling to make that eye contact. Hey, it's hard sometimes. All right, we have to take a little bit of a break. It's Friday, so my assumption, Emily, are we going to show the one that makes me cry? Sure. I always, we can't show it other times of the week because it makes me too emotional, but we have a clip of Brett Myler, who recovered from autism, and he gave a speech at the Card Gala when it was their 20th anniversary, and they had this massive event. Macy Gray sang, and it was at this huge venue in Hollywood, old, very famous venue that's name escapes me right now, but this big, huge, cavernous room with this stage, and there were searchlights and lights everywhere, people in gowns. It was this very elaborate affair, and a lot of stars got up and spoke at this event and talked about how life-changing Card had been, whether in a friend of their child or, it was really, really amazing event, and people performed, and a couple of people, young people with autism that had had an autism diagnosis and recovered, got up and spoke, and Brett was one of them. And imagine how nerve-wracking it would be for any 18-year-old to get up in this room full of people and speak. And then imagine somebody who at one time, I see I'm going to already go there now, at one time had a diagnosis. This is for hope, but we'll have some emotion with it. So take a look at Brett Myler.
Good evening. How's everybody doing tonight? My name is Brett Myler, and I recovered from autism when I was 8 years old due to the extraordinary and selfless efforts of Dr. Doreen Grant-Bichet, Kathy Visconde, Evelyn Gould, and many other amazing therapists. How does a person show gratitude for being taken from the future of institutions and the inability to communicate even basic needs to getting to have a normal, independent life? What do you say to the people that gave up so very much to give you that life? Since I was 8 years old, my parents have always talked about this. If we saw a clearly autistic person now in public, it was always, do you realize that would have been you have done for Doreen? Or, imagine what your life would be like if they hadn't decided to be therapists and had done something else with their lives. Or, do you know what those people sacrificed? How much they gave up to get you here? Of course, I always agreed with them because in my head, intellectually, I understood that all of it was true. But I never really felt it. In my gut, in my heart. I never really felt how great a gift I had been given because of what they had sacrificed for me. Well, I don't know why it took so long to happen. At least it did. And I finally felt a massive sense of gratitude in the pit of my stomach, in my heart for what they had done for me. It was about 9 months ago. I was 18 years old and I had a really great day at work. I was just made Employee of the Month at the grocery store where I work. I had just gotten my first semester grades in college, which were very good, and I overall just had a really great day. It occurred to me that none of the things I had done that day would have been possible without Cart and Dr. Grant-Bichet's help. College, work, driving my truck to a friend's house, none of it would be happening. I got home from work that night, and I went to my mother and said, the next time you talk to them, tell them I said thank you. Thank you for everything. At first she didn't know what I was talking about, but she got it after a few seconds and started to cry. She hugged me and said, don't worry, they already know. I told them. I'm told, but I don't really remember, that when I was 4 years old, one of my therapists really liked the song by the band Oasis called Wonderwall and taught me how to sing it. I guess it was super funny. My mom always heard my struggles with the words of that song, and they dedicated it to me when I graduated from high school. I thought it was nice, but what is a Wonderwall anyway? My mom said it's someone who gives up everything to do something that everyone else thinks is impossible. From what I have been told, it has been a very hard fight to get this kind of care funded and accepted to the point that it is now. And I have been told that CART has had a major role in getting this kind of care to many, many children. I thank you for all that you have sacrificed to help me and those like me. So, at this time, I think it is only fitting to dedicate those same words from the song Wonderwall back to CART, and especially to Dr. Doreen Grant-Bichet. Here goes. And all the roads you had to walk were winding, and all the lights that led you here are blinding. There are many things that I would like to say to you, but I don't know how, because maybe I I know you were the ones that saved me. And after all, you're my Wonderwall.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that, as emotional as it makes me, that is what recovery looks like. And if you think that maybe this young man wasn't profoundly affected by autism, I want to encourage you to get a copy of Recovered and take a look at it, because he was one of the children who was featured in Recovered. His mother is the one that I talk about, Bryce Myler, that is our resident insurance expert that we have on the show from time to time. And in that movie, she talks about the fact that when he was diagnosed, they told her to not get real attached to him because by the time he was 10, he would be institutionalized. That young man, yeah. And you can see video of him when he was at the beginning of his therapy, and his receptive language skills were so low, and they would say something to him and he would get that look on his face about, this look of sheer anxiety that he had no idea what they were asking him, something, really simple. It's devastating to watch, but then you see what he's like as a teenager, and now you've seen him as a young man who's going to college, driving his truck, having fun with his friends, holding down a job, being the employee of the month from time to time. And that we all need to know that this is where some of our kids can get. And I save it for the end because I can't cope with it. On Monday, I get too much of a mess, and then we can't accomplish anything. But it's Friday, so I can go and have my lovely little hopeful boo-hoo. Everybody always says to me, don't be sad. It's not sad. I know you guys know. It's that it's overwhelming, that the idea that this is why we have to advocate for our children. This is why we got to put in the time. This is why we have to bring it, and that we can't afford to sit back down. I remember that night talking to his father, who I had never talked to before, and I said, what do you think? And he said, he's my hero. And he said, I wish everybody knew that this child worked harder than any person I have ever known, that he makes it look effortless now, but that there was a whole lot of work, and he did it. Boy, and don't I know that to be the truth, and you probably do too. But our kids are up for it. They are. And we need to advocate for them so that they can. Hey, as this show ends, the conversation continues. There are so many ways to participate, and let us know what's going on with you, what you need help with, what you need support with, where you're at, what's preventing you from getting good ABA therapy. I want you to share that with us. Lots of ways to get in touch with us. As we mentioned earlier in the show, you can email us. There's the email address over the weekend. Feel free to send your emails. We'll cover your questions in the next available show, and we'll get back to you with a written response. Also want to let you know that you can still phone in and leave a message for us. We will get back to you. You can still get a hold of us via Facebook. You can tweet with us. There are so many ways, and we'll just let Emily cycle through all the different ways that you can get a hold of us. But please take advantage of it in whatever way works for you. It's not a pressure thing, but we want to be here to support you in the best way that we can, and so help us to know how to do that. Tell us what you need. I also want to remind you that the shows will run constantly back to back, showing you older episodes over the weekend on autism-live.com, and that you can be watching there nonstop, but that you can also catch us on Blip TV, you can watch us on YouTube, you can catch us on iTunes, and you can also watch us on Ustream. That those are all great ways of searching topics, finding exactly what you need, pausing, rewinding, because we know that your days are busy and full. But I appreciate the time that you do spend with us. I appreciate you guys letting people know about us, so that, because we're not spending a whole lot of time running out and marketing and spending money on that, because we're here. So if you can, through word of mouth, let friends know, hey, I discovered this show, and when somebody's saying to you, I don't know what to do, and you don't know what to tell them to do, send them to us, because we'd love to help solve problems. That's what we're here for. We're going to be back on Monday, and and before I forget, got to let you know, got some really exciting guests on Monday. We're going to have Dr. Mike Dorsey on Monday, so make sure you tune in right at the top of the show on Monday. Until Monday at 9 a.m., please give your kiddos a hug from us. Bye-bye for now.